There is nothing you need to do right now. Nothing to solve, nowhere to be. Tonight we are going to wander together into a world that vanished long before the first human ever drew breath. A world of slow rivers and warm forests and creatures so vast their footsteps shaped the very ground. We are going to ask a quiet question, one that sounds simple but opens like a door into deep time. How long did the dinosaurs live? Not as a kingdom, not as an age of the earth, but each one individually. How many years did a single dinosaur walk beneath the ancient sun? Let the question settle over you like a soft blanket. There is no hurry. We have all the time in the world, and the world we are visiting had more time than you can possibly imagine. So breathe and let us begin. If you enjoy listening to sleepy prehistoric dinosaur stories like this, subscribe. I post stories like this weekly. Let us start with something gentle, something easy to hold in a mind that is already growing soft and slow. When we ask how long a dinosaur lived, we are really asking two different questions at once, and it helps to separate them the way you might separate two threads of the same quiet song. The first question is about the dinosaurs as a whole. As a family. As a great branching tree of life that spread across the entire planet. This kind of lifespan is measured not in years but in tens of millions of years, in spans so long that the continents themselves drifted and rearranged while the dinosaurs went about their lives. The dinosaurs, taken together, ruled the land for something close to 165 million years. That is the lifespan of the dynasty. The age of the ruling house, if you like the language of old stories. The second question is smaller and somehow more tender. It is about a single animal. One creature, hatched from one egg, who opened its eyes on one particular morning in the deep past, lived its days and then closed its eyes for the last time. How long did that one creature get? A year? A decade? A century? This is the question that feels closest to us, because it is the question we secretly ask about ourselves and everyone we love. How much time do we get? Tonight we will hold both questions, but we will spend most of our hours with the second one. We will sit with the lives of individual dinosaurs, the slow giants and the swift little hunters, the armored ones and the long-necked ones, and we will try to understand the shape of their years. We will discover that some of them lived fast and died young, blazing through their lives in just a handful of seasons. And we will discover that others, the truly enormous ones, may have lived as long as the oldest humans, perhaps even longer, growing slowly across decades the way an ancient tree adds its rings. But before we can answer any of this, we have to understand something strange and wonderful. The dinosaurs did not leave behind diaries. They did not carve their birthdays into stone or keep records of their years. Everything we know about how long they lived, we have had to learn by listening very carefully to their bones. And their bones, it turns out, remember almost everything. Imagine for a moment that you could pick up a single fossilized bone, heavy and cold, the color of old stone. To most eyes it would look like a simple object, a relic, a fragment of something long gone. But to those who know how to read it, that bone is a book. It is a journal written in a language of rings and layers, of dense bands and porous spaces, of marks left by good years and hard years. Every season of that animal's life left a trace inside the bone, and those traces are still there, waiting, patient after all this time. That is the secret we will unravel tonight. We will learn to read the bones the way the scientists do, slowly, gently, layer by layer. And as we read, the lives of these ancient creatures will rise up out of the dark and walk before us once more, not as monsters, not as movie creatures, but as living animals who were born, who grew, who aged, and who lived out their allotted span beneath skies that no human ever saw. So let us go there now. Let us travel back, not all at once, but slowly, the way you sink into a warm bath. Back past the cities and the farms. Back past the ice ages and the first small mammals. Back past the time when the great asteroid fell. Back into the long warm afternoon of the dinosaurs, when the air was thick and green and the world belonged to them. The journey begins with a single egg. Picture a nest. It is not made of twigs in the branches of a tree the way a bird builds. It is a shallow scrape in warm earth, lined perhaps with rotting leaves and soft plant matter, tucked into the shade at the edge of a forest of ferns and tall cone-bearing trees. The year is somewhere in the deep past, the exact moment lost to us, but the scene is one that repeated countless millions of times across the long reign of the dinosaurs. Inside the nest lie the eggs. Some dinosaur eggs were small, no larger than a chicken's egg, surprisingly modest given the size the animal might one day reach. Others were larger, the size of a melon with thick pebbled shells. But here is one of the first gentle surprises of our story. Even the very largest dinosaurs, the ones who would grow to weigh as much as several elephants combined, began their lives in eggs that were astonishingly small. There is a limit, you see, to how large an egg can be. The shell must be thin enough to let air pass through to the growing creature inside, yet strong enough to bear weight without collapsing. Beyond a certain size, the shell would simply have to be too thick, and the baby inside would suffocate, unable to breathe through the dense barrier. And so even the giants started small. This single fact shapes everything about how the giants lived. A baby that hatches from a small egg but is destined to become one of the largest animals ever to walk the earth, has an enormous amount of growing to do. Think of the distance it must travel. From something that fits in your two cupped hands to something longer than a city bus, taller than a house, heavier than a herd of horses. That journey of growth is the great project of its life, and understanding that journey is the key to understanding how long these animals lived. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. Let us return to the nest and the warm egg and the small life stirring inside. When the moment came, the baby dinosaur did not simply break free with ease. Hatching was hard work, the first labor of a life that would be full of labors. Many baby dinosaurs had a small structure on their snout, a hardened bump sometimes called an egg tooth, which they used to scratch and chip at the inner wall of the shell until at last it cracked and gave way. And then, slowly, blinking in light it had never seen, the small creature emerged into the world. What did it see? Depending on the kind of dinosaur and the age of the world, it might have seen the towering trunks of ancient conifers, the soft unfurling fronds of ferns, the slow drift of clouds across a warm sky. It might have heard the calls of other animals, the rustle of the wind, the distant rumble of something larger moving through the undergrowth. The world was loud with life, green and humid and teeming, and into this world the tiny dinosaur took its first uncertain steps. Now here is where the lives of dinosaurs begin to branch apart, like a river splitting into many streams. Because what happened next in those first fragile days depended enormously on what kind of dinosaur this baby was. Some baby dinosaurs were cared for. There is good evidence that certain kinds of dinosaurs were attentive parents, that they guarded their nests, that they brought food to their young, that they sheltered the hatchlings within the protective circle of the herd. For these lucky few, the earliest days were a time of relative safety, watched over by the great bodies of the adults, learning the ways of their kind in the shadow of their parents. But many other baby dinosaurs faced the world entirely alone. They hatched and there was no parent waiting. The adults had laid their eggs and moved on, trusting in numbers, trusting that if enough eggs were laid, some hatchlings would survive even without protection. For these little ones, life began as a desperate scramble. They were small and the world was full of mouths. Predators of every size, from small swift hunters to larger lurking beasts, regarded a baby dinosaur as an easy meal. And so the first task of life was simply not to be eaten. It is here, in these first days and weeks, that the greatest dying happened. We will talk more about this, but let it rest gently in your mind for now. For most kinds of dinosaurs, the most dangerous time of life by far was the very beginning. A baby that survived its first year had already beaten odds that had claimed most of its nest mates. The world thinned out the young with a quiet ruthlessness, and only a fraction lived to grow large. Yet grow they did, those survivors. And here we come to one of the most remarkable things about young dinosaurs. They grew fast. Astonishingly fast. Far faster in many cases than the reptiles of today. A baby crocodile or a baby lizard grows slowly, adding size gradually across many seasons. But a baby dinosaur in many species shot upward in size like a young tree reaching for light, packing on weight and length at a rate that would seem almost impossible if we did not have the evidence written plainly in their bones. Why did they grow so fast? Partly it was survival. The faster a young dinosaur grew, the sooner it passed beyond the reach of the smaller predators, the sooner it became too large to be an easy meal. Size was safety, and reaching size quickly meant living longer. So natural selection, that slow patient sculptor, favored the fast growers, and across millions of years the young dinosaurs became some of the fastest growing creatures the land had ever known. But fast growth has a cost, and that cost is woven into the story of how long they lived. We will return to it. For now, let us simply watch the young dinosaur take its first steps, survive its first dangerous days, and begin the long climb toward the size and the age that awaited it. Rest here a moment. Let the image settle. A small creature in a vast green world, taking its first breath, beginning a life whose length we are slowly going to uncover. There is no rush. The story unfolds at the pace of falling leaves. Now we come to the heart of the mystery, and I want you to follow this part slowly and easily, because it is one of the most beautiful pieces of detective work in all of science, and understanding it will let everything else in our story make sense. The question is simple. The dinosaurs are gone. They left no records of their ages. So how on earth can anyone say that this dinosaur lived to be 30, or that one lived to be 70, or that another died young at the age of 9? Where does that knowledge come from? The answer lies inside their bones, and to understand it, we need to think for a moment about how bone actually grows. You might imagine bone as something fixed and solid like stone or wood. But living bone is not like that at all. Living bone is busy. It is full of tiny channels and vessels, constantly being built up and broken down and rebuilt. It grows from the inside and the outside, adding new layers as the animal gets bigger. And crucially, the rate at which bone grows is not always steady. It speeds up and slows down depending on the conditions of the animal's life. Think of the world the dinosaurs lived in. Even in the warm ancient times, the world had seasons. There were times of plenty, when food was abundant, when the rains came and the plants grew thick and green and there was enough for everyone to eat their fill. And there were leaner times, dry seasons or cold seasons, when food grew scarce, when the animal had to make do with less, when its body had to slow down and conserve. During the good times, when food was plentiful, a young dinosaur's bones grew quickly, laying down new bone in a loose, open, fast-formed pattern. But during the lean times, growth slowed almost to a stop, and the bone that formed was dense and tightly packed, a thin dark band marking the months when the animal grew very little. And here is the beautiful part. Year after year this pattern repeated. A wide band of fast growth, then a thin dark line of slow growth. Fast then slow. Plenty then scarcity. Summer then winter, over and over, season after season, year after year, for the whole length of the animal's life. The result is that the inside of a dinosaur's bone looks remarkably like the inside of a tree trunk. You have surely seen the rings of a tree, those concentric circles spreading out from the center, each ring marking 1 year of the tree's life. Count the rings and you know the age of the tree. Well, dinosaur bones have rings too. Not in quite the same way, but the principle is wonderfully similar. Those thin dark lines, the marks of the lean seasons, are spaced roughly 1 year apart. And so, by cutting a thin slice of fossilized bone, polishing it until it is almost transparent, and placing it under a microscope, scientists can count the lines and read the years, just as you would read the rings of a felled tree. These lines have a name. They are called lines of arrested growth, because each one marks a time when growth was arrested, slowed, paused. But you do not need to remember the technical name. Just hold the image. Rings in the bone, like rings in a tree, each one a year, each one a season survived, a winter weathered, a turn around the ancient sun. Imagine the patience of this work. A scientist takes a fossil that has waited tens of millions of years in the rock. They cut from it a sliver so thin that light can pass through it. They polish it with the care of someone polishing a precious gem. And then they bend over the microscope and begin to count. 1 ring. 2 rings. 3. Each ring a year of a life lived in a world that no longer exists. It is a kind of communion across an unimaginable gulf of time, a quiet conversation between a living person and a creature that died before the flowers had even fully spread across the earth. There is something deeply peaceful in this, I think. The idea that a life, even a life so distant and strange, leaves a record. That the years are not lost. That somewhere inside the calcified remains of a creature gone for 66 million years, the seasons it lived through are still faithfully counted, waiting for someone patient enough to read them. Now, this method is wonderful, but it is not perfect, and it is worth understanding its limits gently so that we hold our knowledge with appropriate humility. As an animal ages and reaches its full size, its bones stop growing outward. And once the bone stops adding new layers, it stops adding new rings. Worse, in the very oldest animals, the inner rings can be eroded away as the central cavity of the bone widens with age, like the earliest pages of a book being slowly worn away. So for the oldest individuals, the ones who live the longest, the record can become harder to read, and scientists must use clever methods to estimate the missing years. This is part of why the question of how long dinosaurs lived remains in some ways an open one. We can read the bones with great skill, but the bones do not always tell us everything. There is room for mystery still, room for new discoveries, room for the numbers to shift as our methods improve. And that, too, is a comfort of sorts. The ancient world still holds its secrets. It has not given everything up. Some of the years of the dinosaurs are still hidden, still waiting, still theirs. So now we have our tool. We know how to read the years. Let us use it, gently, to explore the very different lifespans of the very different kinds of dinosaurs. For just as some humans live in cities and others in quiet villages, just as some lives are short and bright and others long and slow, the dinosaurs lived their years in many different rhythms. And we are about to meet them, one kind at a time, and learn the shape of each one's allotted span. Let your breathing settle. We have laid our foundation. Now the real wandering begins. Let us begin with the largest of them all, the ones whose lifespans stretch furthest into the realm of the truly long-lived. These are the sauropods, the great long-necked dinosaurs, the gentle towering giants whose very name in the deep memory of childhood conjures something serene and vast. Picture them now, slowly, the way you might picture a herd of elephants moving across a distant plain at dusk. The sauropods were the largest animals ever to walk upon the land. No creature before them or since has matched their scale. Some of them stretched longer than 2 buses placed end to end. Some lifted their heads higher than a 4-story building when they reached up to feed among the treetops. Some weighed as much as 10 or 12 elephants, their bodies so massive that the ground itself trembled with each ponderous step. They were the embodiment of slowness and size, of patience made flesh, moving through the ancient forests at the unhurried pace of clouds. And it is precisely because they were so large that their lives were so long. Think back to what we learned about the egg. A baby sauropod hatched from an egg not so very different in size from a large grapefruit. And yet it was destined, if it survived, to become a creature weighing tens of thousands of pounds. The distance between the hatchling and the adult was almost beyond comprehension. A baby sauropod might have weighed only a few pounds at hatching. The adult might have weighed 60,000 pounds or more. That is a journey of growth across many thousands of times its starting weight. No human grows like that. We are born weighing perhaps 7 or 8 pounds and grow to weigh a couple hundred at most, a journey of perhaps 20 or 30 times our birth weight. The sauropod's journey was on a scale hundreds of times greater than ours. How long does it take to make that journey? This is the question that reveals the long lives of the giants. And the bones give us an answer written in those patient rings. When scientists slice into the bones of the great sauropods and count the lines of arrested growth, they find something wonderful. These animals took a very long time to reach their full size. The fast growth of youth, which we spoke of earlier, carried them upward at a remarkable rate, but there was simply so much growing to do that even rapid growth needed decades to complete the task. A sauropod might spend the first 10 or 20 years of its life in a state of near constant growth, packing on weight, lengthening its neck and tail, thickening its mighty legs. And then, having reached something close to its adult size, it would continue to live on year after year, in the long calm plateau of maturity. The best estimates suggest that the great sauropods lived for many decades. Some scientists believe that the largest of them may have lived for 60 years, 70 years, perhaps even longer. There are estimates that push toward a century for the most enormous individuals, though here we are in the realm of careful guesswork, because the very oldest animals are exactly the ones whose innermost rings have been worn away. But the broad picture is clear and astonishing. These giants lived as long as a human being, sometimes longer. A sauropod browsing among the treetops might have been older than your grandparents. It might have been a living creature for the better part of 100 years, witnessing decade after decade of seasons turn, watching countless smaller animals be born and die within the span of its single long life. Imagine that life from the inside, slowly, the way you are slowly drifting now. Imagine being a young sauropod, small enough to hide among the ferns, vulnerable to every passing predator, growing as fast as your body could manage. Imagine the years passing, and with each year your body growing larger, your legs longer, your reach higher. Imagine the day when you grew too large for any predator to threaten, when your sheer size became a fortress that no hunter could breach. From that day forward, your life would have been one of remarkable peace. Few animals in the history of the earth have been as safe as a fully grown sauropod. Nothing could touch them. They moved through their world like living mountains, untroubled, unhurried, eating and walking and resting beneath the warm sky for decade upon decade. What did they do with all those years? They ate mostly. A body that large requires an enormous amount of fuel, and so the great sauropods spent much of their long lives doing little else but feeding. They cropped vegetation from the trees and the ground, swallowing it whole without much chewing, letting the vast fermenting vats of their stomachs do the slow work of digestion. Their long necks let them reach food that no other animal could touch, sweeping across great arcs of forest while their massive bodies remained still, conserving energy. It was a life of slow, patient consumption, of standing among the green abundance and simply taking it in, hour after hour, day after day, year after year. And they were not solitary, many of them. There is good evidence that sauropods moved in herds, great gatherings of giants traveling together across the landscape. Trackways preserved in ancient stone show many individuals walking in the same direction, the large and the small together, suggesting families and herds moving as one. Picture that. A herd of the largest creatures ever to live, moving slowly across a wide plain in the golden light of an ancient evening, the young sheltered in the center, the great adults forming a living wall around them, all of them bound together in the slow rhythm of their long, long lives. There is a particular peace in contemplating the lifespan of these animals. Their slowness was not weakness. Their size was not a burden. They had found a way of living that rewarded patience above all else, that turned the simple passage of time into a kind of armor. The longer they lived, the larger they grew, and the larger they grew, the safer they became, and the safer they became, the longer they lived. It was a gentle spiral, an upward turning of years and growth that carried them to the very heights of what life on land has ever achieved. Of course, not every sauropod reached those great ages. We must remember the thinning of the young. For every giant that lived to be 70, there were many, many hatchlings who never saw their second year, who were taken by predators or claimed by hardship in those first vulnerable seasons. The long life of the sauropod was a prize won only by the survivors, a reward for having made it through the dangerous beginning. But for those who did survive, the reward was a lifespan as long as our own, lived out at a scale we can barely imagine, beneath skies that have not existed for 100 million years. Let us linger here a little longer in the company of the giants, because their slowness is exactly the medicine for a mind preparing for sleep. There is no urgency in a sauropod. There is no hurry. There is only the slow turning of the seasons, the patient growth of the body, the long calm afternoon of a life measured in decades. Breathe in time with them. Let your thoughts grow as slow and as vast as a creature that lived for 100 years and never once worried about the time. We will leave the giants now, but gently, the way you would leave a sleeping herd, careful not to disturb their rest. We have learned that the largest dinosaurs lived the longest, that their size and their lifespan rose together, that some of them may have lived as long as the oldest humans alive today. Hold that thought as we move on to creatures of a very different rhythm, the swift and the small, whose lives burned brighter and shorter, like candles instead of slow steady stars. If the great sauropods were the slow steady stars of the dinosaur world, burning gently across the better part of a century, then the small swift dinosaurs were the candles, bright and quick and soon spent. And their lives, though much shorter, were no less complete, no less full, no less worthy of our quiet attention as we drift towards sleep. Let us picture one now. A small predator, perhaps the size of a turkey or a large dog, lightly built, with hollow bones and long-running legs and quick darting eyes. These were the swift hunters of the undergrowth, the agile little carnivores who lived by speed and cunning rather than by size and armor. They could not rely on being too large to eat the way the sauropods could. Instead they relied on being too fast to catch, too clever to corner, too quick to pin down. The lives of these small dinosaurs ran on a faster clock. Where the giant took decades to reach its full size, the small hunter might reach adulthood in just a few years. Where the giant lived for 60 or 70 years, the small hunter might live for only a handful, perhaps reaching 10 or 15 years if it was very lucky and very skilled and the world was very kind. Most did not even get that long. The life of a small predator was a dangerous one, full of risk, lived always on the knife edge between the hunt and the hunger, between catching a meal and becoming one. But here is something that may surprise you, something gentle and worth holding. A shorter life is not a lesser life. The small swift dinosaurs lived their years at a faster pace, but they lived them fully. They grew, they hunted, they found mates, they raised young, all within the compressed span of their brief existence. A few years was all the time their kind of life required. They were not cut short. They were complete. Their lifespan fit their way of living the way a glove fits a hand, neither too long nor too short, exactly right for the creature they were. There is a principle hidden here, one that runs through all of life, then and now. The pace of a life tends to match the size of the body. Small animals, as a rule, live fast and die young. Their hearts beat quickly, their bodies burn through energy at a rapid rate, they grow up fast and they age fast. Large animals, by contrast, live slow and die old. Their hearts beat slowly, their bodies burn fuel gently, they take their time growing and they take their time aging. A mouse and an elephant follow the same rule today, and the small dinosaurs and the great sauropods followed it in the deep past. The little ones lived their bright brief lives and the big ones lived their slow long ones, and both were exactly as nature had shaped them to be. Let us follow a small swift dinosaur through the arc of its short life, slowly, peacefully, even though its life was lived at speed. It hatched, as all of them did, from a small egg into a world full of danger. If it survived its first vulnerable months, it grew quickly, its long legs lengthening, its hunting instincts sharpening. Within a year or two it was nearly full grown, a lithe and capable hunter, moving through the ferns and the fallen logs in search of small prey. It hunted insects perhaps, or small reptiles, or the eggs and hatchlings of other dinosaurs. It was quick and watchful, always alert, always ready to dart away from danger or dart forward toward a meal. Within a few short years, it would have reached maturity, found a mate, and produced a clutch of its own eggs, passing its swift bright life on to the next generation. And then, having done what its life was for, it would in time grow old, though old for such a creature, came quickly. By the age of 10 or so, if it lived that long, it was already an elder of its kind, a survivor of countless dangers, weathered and experienced. Few lived much longer. The world wore them down, as the world wears down all swift things, and in time the small hunter would lie down for the last time, its brief candle spent, its years complete. There is no sadness in this, not really, when you look at it with calm eyes. The small dinosaur lived exactly the life it was made for. It was never meant to live for a century. Its body, its habits, its place in the world all called for a quick and lively existence, and that is exactly what it had. To wish it a longer life would be to wish it were a different creature entirely. It was perfect as it was, brief as it was, swift as it was. And there were so many of them. The small dinosaurs were far more numerous than the giants, the way small animals are always more numerous than large ones. For every towering sauropod, there were countless small swift hunters scurrying through the undergrowth, living their brief bright lives in the shadows of the giants. The ancient world was full of them, a teeming multitude of quick little creatures, each one running through its handful of years, each one a complete and finished life. Let us hold them gently in our minds, these small swift ones, before we move on. There is something tender about a life that burns quickly and is soon over, something that touches close to our own fears and our own hopes. But remember the lesson of the small dinosaur. A life is not measured by its length alone. It is measured by its completeness, by whether it was the right life for the creature living it. The small dinosaur had a short life and a complete one, and it asked for nothing more. Breathe slowly now. Let the image of the swift little hunter fade gently into the green of the ancient forest, where it belongs. We have met the slow giants and the swift small ones, the longest lived and the shortest lived of the dinosaur world. Now let us turn to those who lived somewhere in between, the great predators whose lives balanced size and speed, danger and power, in a rhythm all their own. Now we come to the dinosaurs that loom largest in the imagination, the great predators, the giant meat-eaters whose images have thundered through our dreams since childhood. The most famous of them all, of course, is the one whose name even sleeping children seem to know, the great tyrant lizard, the king of the late dinosaur world. Let us speak of these mighty hunters now, softly, and learn the surprising shape of their years. You might assume, given their enormous size, that the great predators lived as long as the great sauropods. They were huge after all. The largest of them stretched longer than a bus and weighed as much as several cars together. Surely such giants lived for many decades the way the long-necked giants did. But here the bones tell us a different and rather poignant story. The great predators, for all their size and power, did not live nearly as long as their gentle plant-eating neighbors. Their lives were shorter, harder, and lived at a faster burn. The famous tyrant king, that towering hunter with the massive head and the bone-crushing jaws, appears to have lived for only around 30 years at most. The very oldest individuals we have found, the great matriarchs and patriarchs of their kind, reached perhaps their late 20s or early 30s before they died. 30 years. A long time by human standards in the sense that it is most of a young person's life, but far short of the sauropod's possible century. The king of predators lived only about half as long as the giants it sometimes hunted. And the way it reached its great size is one of the most dramatic growth stories in all of nature. For the first years of its life, the young tyrant king grew at a relatively modest pace. It was a gangly, long-legged adolescent, swift and lean, quite different in shape from the massive adult it would become. And then, somewhere around its teenage years, something extraordinary happened. It entered a period of explosive growth, a growth spurt so intense that it almost defies belief. During these few years, the young tyrant king packed on weight at a tremendous rate, gaining perhaps 4 or 5 pounds every single day. Day after day for years, it ballooned in size, transforming from a swift slender hunter into the colossal bone-crushing tyrant we know from its fossils. Imagine that, slowly as you rest. A creature growing so fast that you could almost watch it change from week to week. 5 pounds a day every day for several years. By the time the growth spurt ended, the animal had transformed completely, its body reshaped by the furious pace of its growth into the apex predator of its world. And then, having reached its full and terrible size, it would live on for only a few more years, ruling its domain, hunting, surviving, until its relatively brief life came to its end in its third decade. Why did the great predators live such comparatively short lives? Part of the answer lies in the dangerous nature of their existence. To be a predator is to live a life of risk. Every hunt is a gamble. The prey of a great tyrant king was not helpless. The horned dinosaurs it hunted had great horns and powerful builds. The armored dinosaurs had clubs and spikes. Even the duck-billed dinosaurs it pursued were large and powerful and capable of delivering injuries. A predator that misjudged an attack might be gored or kicked or struck by a swinging tail, and an injured predator is a predator that may soon starve. The hunting life was a hard one, full of broken bones and deep wounds, and the fossils of the great predators often show exactly these injuries, healed scars and mended fractures that tell of a life lived in constant physical danger. The bones of one famous tyrant king, perhaps the most studied dinosaur skeleton ever found, show a body riddled with the marks of a hard life. Broken ribs that had healed. Infections in the jaw. Signs of injury and illness accumulated across the years. This was an animal that lived hard and bore the marks of it, that survived encounter after encounter with prey and rivals and the simple wear of being an enormous active predator. By the time it died in its late 20s, its body was a record of battles, a testament to a life lived at the very edge of what such a creature could endure. And yet, even within this hard short life, there was a kind of magnificence. For the few years that the great predator reigned at its full size, it was utterly without rival. Nothing could challenge a fully grown tyrant king. It walked through its world as the absolute master of all it surveyed, the largest and most powerful hunter on the land. Its few years of full maturity were years of total dominance, a brief blazing reign at the summit of its world. The candle burned fast, but oh, how brightly it burned. There is something to learn here, gently, about the relationship between power and time. The great predators traded length of life for intensity of life. They grew faster, lived harder, burned hotter, and were spent sooner. The slow giants chose the opposite path, growing slowly, living gently, enduring for decades. Neither path was better than the other. Each was simply the way that particular kind of creature met the challenge of being alive. The predator's brief intense reign and the giant's long slow endurance were two different answers to the same ancient question of how to live, and the deep past had room for both. Let us also remember that not every great predator even reached that brief maturity. Just as with all dinosaurs, the young faced terrible odds. A young tyrant king had to survive its vulnerable early years, had to make it through the dangerous growth spurt, had to learn to hunt and to avoid the many ways that a young predator could die. Many did not make it. The ones whose fossils we find, the great adults in their 20s and 30s, were the survivors, the ones who had beaten the long odds of a predator's life. For each one, there were others who fell along the way, young hunters whose lives ended before they ever reached their full and fearsome size. Picture the great predator now, one last time, in the calm of your drifting mind. Not as a monster, not as a movie creature, but as a living animal, born small, grown swift, transformed by furious growth into a giant, reigning briefly at the summit of its world, and then, after only a few decades, lying down at last to rest. Its life was short and hard and brilliant, a life of power and risk and brief dominion. And then it too became bone, and the bone became stone, and the stone kept faithful count of its 30 years until we came along, so very long after, to read them. Breathe out slowly. The great hunters are at rest now, and so may you be. We have learned that even the mightiest predators lived shorter lives than the gentle giants, that they grew in furious spurts and reigned only briefly, that power and long life do not always travel together. Let us move on now to creatures built not for hunting but for defense, the armored and the horned, whose lives followed yet another rhythm in the great symphony of dinosaur time. Let us turn now to the dinosaurs who lived their lives not as hunters and not as towering giants, but as walking fortresses, creatures clad in armor and crowned with horns, built to endure, built to defend, built to outlast the dangers of their world. Their lives, too, had a shape all their own, and there is great peace in contemplating them. First, the armored ones. Picture a low-slung, heavily built dinosaur, its back covered in thick bony plates, its body protected by a living shield of armor grown right into its skin. Some of these armored dinosaurs carried great clubs of solid bone at the ends of their tails, mighty weapons that could swing with bone-breaking force. Others bristled with spikes along their sides, making them nearly impossible for any predator to attack without injury. They were the tanks of the dinosaur world, slow and deliberate and almost impossibly well defended. These armored dinosaurs lived lives of patient endurance. They were not fast. They did not need to be. Their defense was not flight but resistance, the simple stubborn refusal to be harmed. A predator that attacked a fully grown armored dinosaur risked breaking its teeth on the bony plates, or being struck by the great tail club, or impaling itself on the spikes. And so the armored dinosaurs, once grown, lived in a state of considerable safety, much like the great sauropods, protected not by size alone but by the fortress of their own bodies. How long did they live? The evidence suggests they lived for a good many years, growing slowly to their full armored size and then enduring for a decade or more beyond that, perhaps reaching their 20s or 30s in the longest-lived cases. Their lives were not as long as the great sauropods, but they were considerably longer than the swift small hunters, a comfortable middle span befitting their patient, defensive way of life. They lived slowly and they lived securely, plodding through the ancient forests and floodplains, cropping low vegetation, asking nothing of the world but to be left alone, and well defended enough that the world usually obliged. There is something deeply restful about the armored dinosaurs. They were creatures of patience and persistence, of quiet endurance rather than dramatic action. They did not chase, they did not flee, they did not tower over the landscape. They simply were solid and steady and secure, moving through their long lives at an unhurried pace, their armor a guarantee of many peaceful years. Imagine being so well protected that you never needed to hurry, never needed to fear, never needed to do anything but eat and walk and rest in the warm green world. That was the life of the armored dinosaur, and it is a life that invites the mind towards stillness. Now let us turn to the horned dinosaurs, those magnificent creatures with the great frills and the long horns, the most famous of which carried 3 horns upon its face and a vast bony shield rising up behind its head. These were among the most numerous large dinosaurs of the late ancient world, moving in great herds across the landscape, their horned faces and frilled crowns making them unmistakable. The horned dinosaurs lived lives that balanced defense and society. Like the armored ones, they were built to resist predators, their horns and frills serving as both weapons and shields. A fully grown horned dinosaur was a formidable opponent, capable of driving off even the great predators with its sharp horns and its powerful build. But unlike the solitary armored ones, many horned dinosaurs lived in herds, finding safety in numbers as well as in their formidable anatomy. Their lifespans appear to have stretched across a decade or two, perhaps longer for the largest and most fortunate individuals. They grew steadily through their youth, their horns and frills developing gradually, changing shape as the animal aged. In fact, the horns and frills of these dinosaurs changed so much over the course of a life that young individuals looked quite different from old ones, so different that scientists sometimes mistook the young and the old of the same kind for entirely different species. The horns might curve one way in youth and another way in age. The frill might grow longer or develop new bumps and projections, or change its proportions entirely as the animal matured. Reading these changes is yet another way that scientists piece together the life stories of these creatures, watching how their bodies transformed across the years. Imagine a great herd of horned dinosaurs moving across an ancient plain, the old and the young together, the great horned adults forming a protective ring around the smaller juveniles, all of them moving as one through the tall vegetation under a wide warm sky. The young would grow within the safety of the herd, their horns slowly lengthening, their frills slowly broadening, until in time they too became great horned adults, ready to take their place in the protective circle and shelter the next generation of young. It was a life of belonging, of moving together, of the generations folded into one another within the safety of the herd. The horned dinosaurs, like the armored ones, lived their middling spans in relative security once they reached their full size. The great predators might pick off the young, the old, the sick, the stragglers, but a healthy adult in the midst of the herd was well protected indeed. And so they lived their decade or two, growing and changing, belonging and protecting, before laying down at last to rest, their great horned skulls eventually becoming some of the most striking fossils ever found, gazing out at us across the gulf of time with their strange and beautiful crowns. Let us rest a moment with these patient, well-defended creatures, the armored and the horned. There is a particular comfort in their way of living, in the security of armor and the belonging of the herd. They did not live the longest of all dinosaurs, nor the shortest. They lived sensible, sturdy, middling spans, protected by their bodies and their numbers, enduring through the seasons with quiet persistence. And in their middle path between the brief lives of the small hunters and the long lives of the great giants, there is a kind of balance, a kind of peace, that is exactly right for a mind settling towards sleep. Breathe slowly. Let the great herds of horned and armored dinosaurs move on across the plain of your imagination, unhurried, secure, at peace. We have now met the long-lived giants, the short-lived swift ones, the hard-living great predators, and the patient middle-dwelling armored and horned dinosaurs. Each kind lived its years in its own rhythm, and together they fill the ancient world with a great variety of lives, long and short and everything in between. Now let us rise up into the air and meet the dinosaurs who took to the skies, and learn the shape of their flying years. Among the most numerous and successful of all the plant-eating dinosaurs were the great duck-billed dinosaurs, named for the broad flattened shape of their snouts, which gave them a passing resemblance to the ducks of our own age. These were the gentle multitudes of the late ancient world, moving in vast herds across the landscape, and their lives offer us yet another window into the question of how long the dinosaurs lived. Picture them now, slowly as your breathing deepens. A duck-billed dinosaur was a large animal, often able to move both on four legs and on two, rising up on its hind limbs to reach higher vegetation or to peer over the herd, then dropping back down to all fours to walk and graze. Many of them carried remarkable crests upon their heads, hollow bony structures of curious shapes, some like great curved tubes, some like broad flat plates, some like elegant backswept horns. These crests, we believe, may have been used to make sounds, deep resonant calls that echoed across the herd, a way of speaking and signaling among the gentle multitudes. The duck-billed dinosaurs grew quickly even by the standards of dinosaurs. Their bones show that they shot up in size at a remarkable rate during their youth, reaching a large fraction of their adult size within just a few years. This rapid growth was, once again, a strategy for survival. The faster a young duck-bill grew, the sooner it passed beyond the reach of predators, the sooner it gained the size and the strength to keep pace with the herd. And so they grew fast, these gentle giants, racing toward the relative safety of adulthood. How long did they live in total? The evidence suggests that the duck-billed dinosaurs lived for a decade or two, perhaps reaching their late 20s or beyond in the longest-lived cases. They grew swiftly through their early years, reached their full size in their first decade or so, and then lived on for some years beyond, moving with the herd, raising their young, filling the ancient landscape with their multitudes. Their lifespans were respectable, neither the briefest nor the longest, a comfortable span for a successful and abundant kind of creature. What strikes me most about the duck-billed dinosaurs is the richness of their social lives, and how that richness fills out the picture of their years. These were animals that lived together, that traveled together, that very likely cared for their young together. There are sites in the ancient rock where the nests of duck-billed dinosaurs have been found gathered closely together, suggesting great nesting colonies where many parents raised their young side by side, much as some seabirds do today. The very name given to one such dinosaur means good mother lizard, bestowed because the evidence suggested that these creatures tended their nests with care, bringing food to their hatchlings, watching over the young until they were strong enough to fend for themselves. Imagine such a nesting colony, slowly, peacefully. A great gathering of duck-billed dinosaurs spread across a wide nesting ground, each nest a shallow mound holding its clutch of eggs. The adults moving among the nests, tending their young, the air filled with the soft sounds of the colony, the calls of the parents and the cheeping of the hatchlings. The young growing quickly, sheltered by the watchful adults, learning the ways of their kind. And then, as the seasons turned, the young growing large enough to join the herd, to walk with the multitudes, to begin their own journey through the years toward adulthood and eventually toward nests of their own. This is a tender picture, and it deserves to be held gently. The duck-billed dinosaurs were not solitary creatures struggling alone through a hostile world. They were social animals, bound together in herds and colonies, sharing the work of raising the young, finding safety and belonging in their great numbers. Their lives, however long or short, were lives lived in company, lives woven into the larger life of the herd. And there is something deeply comforting in that, in the thought of these gentle creatures moving together across the ancient plains, the generations folded into one another, no one truly alone. The duck-billed dinosaurs were so successful, so numerous, so well-suited to their world, that they spread across vast regions of the ancient earth. They were among the most common large dinosaurs of their time, the great gentle herds that filled the landscape and fed the predators and shaped the very plant life of their world through their constant grazing. They were, in a sense, the cattle of the dinosaur age, the abundant herbivores upon which so much of the ecosystem depended. And yet, for all their abundance, each individual duck-billed dinosaur lived its own single life, its own span of years, its own journey from the egg to the end. Each one hatched, grew, lived among the herd, and in time grew old and died just like every other creature that has ever lived. The herd endured across the generations, but each member of it had only its own handful of years, its own decade or two beneath the warm sky. The multitude was made of individuals, each one precious, each one complete, each one living out its allotted span before passing on and making room for the next. Let us rest a while with the gentle multitudes, with the great herds of duck-billed dinosaurs moving across the ancient plains, calling to one another with their deep resonant voices, tending their young in their crowded colonies, growing swiftly toward adulthood and living out their respectable spans in the company of their kind. There is peace in their abundance, peace in their belonging, peace in the gentle social rhythm of their lives. Let that peace settle over you now, as the herd moves slowly into the distance and the soft sounds of the colony fade into the warm green hush of the ancient world. Now let us lift our gaze upward, away from the land and into the air, and consider a truth that may surprise you as you drift towards sleep. The dinosaurs are not entirely gone. They did not all vanish. Some of them are still here, with us, in our own world, and you have very likely seen one today without ever thinking of it as a dinosaur at all. For the birds, every single bird that flies through our skies or sings in our trees or paddles across our ponds, the birds are dinosaurs. They are the living descendants of the dinosaurs, the one branch of that great ancient family that survived the catastrophe that claimed all the others. The sparrow at your window, the hawk circling overhead, the chicken in the farmyard, the great soaring eagle, all of them are dinosaurs, carrying the ancient lineage forward into our own time. The age of the dinosaurs never truly ended. It simply took to the air and grew feathers and learned to sing. This changes our question in a beautiful way. When we ask how long dinosaurs lived, we can now ask it of the living. We can watch the birds and see, with our own eyes, the lifespans of the dinosaurs that survived. And what we find is once again a great variety, a whole spectrum of lives, long and short, fast and slow, following the same ancient rules that govern their extinct relatives. The small birds, the sparrows and the finches and the wrens, live fast and brief lives, much like the small swift dinosaurs of old. A tiny songbird might live only a few years in the wild, its little heart beating with furious speed, its body burning through energy at a tremendous rate, its life lived at the quick bright pace that small bodies always seem to follow. It hatches, it grows with astonishing speed, it sings and finds a mate and raises its young, and within a handful of years its bright brief life is complete. The same rhythm you will notice as the small swift dinosaurs we met earlier. The small ones live fast and die young in the air as on the ground then as now. But the large birds tell a different and more surprising story, one that echoes the long lives of the great dinosaurs. The largest birds, the great parrots and the mighty albatrosses and the towering ostriches, can live for many decades. Some parrots have lived past the age of 50, even past 60, keeping company with humans across the better part of a human lifetime. The great albatross, that magnificent ocean wanderer, can live for 50 years or more, soaring across the open seas for decade upon decade. These long-lived birds, the giants of the modern dinosaur world, carry forward the ancient pattern, the same one we saw in the great sauropods. The large ones live slow and long, the small ones live fast and brief, and the rule holds true across 100 million years and more. There is a wonderful continuity in this, a thread that runs unbroken from the deep past into our own gardens and skies. When you watch a great bird wheel slowly across the sky, you are watching a creature whose ancestors watched over the same earth in the age of the dinosaurs, a creature that carries in its body the same ancient rhythms of growth and age that governed the giants of old. The lifespan of a long-lived parrot is, in a real sense, a living echo of the lifespan of a dinosaur, a fragment of the deep past still beating with life in our own time. Let us also remember the flying creatures of the ancient skies that were not technically dinosaurs, but their close cousins, the great winged reptiles that ruled the air during the age of the dinosaurs. These were not birds and not dinosaurs in the strict sense, but they shared the skies with the dinosaurs for many millions of years, and their lives are part of the same great story. Some of them grew to enormous sizes, with wingspans as wide as a small airplane, soaring over the ancient landscape on leathery wings. Their lifespans are harder for us to read, but the largest of them likely lived for many years, perhaps decades, gliding across the prehistoric world on their vast wings, looking down upon the herds of dinosaurs moving across the land far below. Imagine that view slowly as you rest. To be a great winged creature soaring high above the ancient earth, looking down upon the green forests and the wide plains, the herds of horned and duck-billed dinosaurs moving like slow rivers across the land, the great sauropods standing among the treetops, the whole teeming world of the dinosaurs spread out beneath you in the warm golden light. To wheel and glide on the warm rising air year after year, watching the seasons turn and the herds move and the great drama of ancient life unfold below. What a thing it must have been to live such a life, to see such sights, to ride the ancient winds for years on end above a world we can only dream of. The birds carried something of that freedom forward, that mastery of the air, that ancient lineage of flight. And so the dinosaurs live on, in a sense, every time a bird takes wing. The next time you see a bird, any bird, pause a moment and consider that you are looking at a living dinosaur, a survivor of the great ancient family, carrying forward across the ages the same rhythms of life and growth and age that we have been exploring all this long quiet night. The age of the dinosaurs is not entirely past. A small bright piece of it is singing in your trees right now. Let your mind drift up among the wings, the ancient and the modern, the great winged reptiles of the deep past and the living birds of our own world, all of them riding the warm air, all of them descendants or cousins of the dinosaurs, all of them carrying the long story forward. There is a freedom in the air, a lightness, that is exactly right for a mind beginning to float free of the day. Let yourself float with them a while, high above the green world, where the seasons turn slowly and the winds are always warm. To understand truly how long the dinosaurs lived, we must wander now into one of the gentlest and most fascinating mysteries of all, a question that scientists have turned over and over for many long years. Were the dinosaurs warm-blooded like the birds and the mammals of today, or cold-blooded like the reptiles? The answer, it turns out, shapes the very pace of their lives, the speed of their growth, and the length of their years. So let us consider it slowly as a soft puzzle to turn over in a drowsy mind. Think first of the difference between a warm-blooded animal and a cold-blooded one, for it is a profound difference indeed. A warm-blooded animal, like yourself, like a dog or a bird, generates its own heat from within. Its body burns fuel constantly, like a small furnace, keeping itself warm and active no matter the temperature of the world around it. This is why you can be active on a cold morning, why a bird can fly through chilly air, why a mammal can hunt in the snow. But this inner warmth comes at a great cost. A warm-blooded animal must eat a great deal of food to fuel its inner furnace, far more than a cold-blooded animal of the same size. The furnace is always burning and it must always be fed. A cold-blooded animal, by contrast, does not generate much heat of its own. It takes its warmth from the world around it, basking in the sun to warm up, growing sluggish in the cold. A lizard on a cool morning is slow and stiff, waiting for the sun to bring it back to life. But because it does not run an inner furnace, a cold-blooded animal needs far less food. It can survive on a fraction of what a warm-blooded animal of the same size requires. The cold-blooded way of life is slower, more dependent on the warmth of the world, but also far more economical, far less hungry. Now, here is why this matters so much for our question of lifespan. The pace of an animal's life, the speed of its growth and its aging, is closely tied to how fast its body burns fuel. Warm-blooded animals, with their constantly burning furnaces, tend to grow quickly and in many cases to age more quickly too. Cold-blooded animals, burning fuel slowly, tend to grow slowly, and they can sometimes live to remarkable ages, ticking along gently at their economical pace. The great tortoises, those famously long-lived cold-blooded creatures, can live well past 100 years, plodding through the decades at their slow, steady pace, their bodies sipping fuel rather than gulping it. So which were the dinosaurs? For a long time, people assumed they were cold-blooded like the reptiles they superficially resembled. The very word dinosaur in the old imagination conjured something slow and sluggish, a great cold-blooded beast basking in the ancient sun. But as scientists learned to read the bones, they discovered something that did not fit this picture at all. The bones of many dinosaurs showed the signs of fast growth, the loose open texture that warm-blooded animals produce when they grow quickly. The dinosaurs, it seemed, had grown far too fast to be simple cold-blooded reptiles. They had grown more like birds and mammals, packing on size at a warm-blooded pace. And yet they were not quite like modern warm-blooded animals either. The picture that has slowly emerged is wonderfully nuanced and rather beautiful. Many dinosaurs seem to have occupied a kind of middle ground, a state that was neither fully cold-blooded nor fully warm-blooded, but something in between, something all their own. Their bodies ran warmer and faster than a lizard's, allowing them to grow quickly and to be active and capable creatures. But they may not have run quite as hot as a modern bird or mammal, perhaps striking a balance that let them grow fast without needing to eat quite as voraciously as a fully warm-blooded giant would have to. This middle path may help explain the great range of lifespans we have been exploring. The dinosaurs grew fast like warm-blooded animals, which is why even the giants could reach their enormous sizes within a few decades rather than needing centuries. But the largest of them could also live long, like the slow cold-blooded giants, reaching ages of many decades. They seem to have combined, in their own unique way, the fast growth of the warm-blooded with something of the longevity of the slow and steady. It is as if they found a path between the two great strategies of animal life, taking the best of both, growing quickly in their youth and then enduring gently across the long calm years of their maturity. There is a particular comfort in this in-between nature of the dinosaurs, I think. They were not one thing or the other, not simply hot or simply cold, but something balanced, something that does not fit our neat categories. The living world is often like this, full of creatures that blur our boundaries and confound our simple labels. The dinosaurs were warm in their own way, slow in their own way, fast in their own way, long-lived in their own way, each kind finding its own particular balance suited to its own particular life. And in that variety, that refusal to be pinned down, there is a richness that rewards slow contemplation. Imagine as you rest the great sauropod again, that gentle giant we met long ago in our journey tonight. Picture its body, neither blazing hot like a bird nor cold and sluggish like a lizard, but warm and steady, a great living engine running at a measured pace. In its youth it grew swiftly, its warm body building bone at a rapid rate. And then, having reached its great size, it settled into the long slow rhythm of maturity, its body ticking along economically, sipping the energy it needed from the abundant vegetation, enduring across the decades at a pace as gentle and unhurried as the drifting of the clouds. Warm enough to grow, slow enough to last. That was the secret of the giant's long life. Let this gentle puzzle rest now in your softening mind. We do not need to solve it tonight, nor could we, for the scientists are still turning it over, still reading the bones, still refining their understanding of the strange in-between nature of these ancient creatures. But we have learned enough to deepen our wonder. The dinosaurs grew fast and lived long because they found their own unique balance between the warm and the cold, the fast and the slow, the hungry furnace and the economical ember. And in that balance lay the great range of their lives, from the brief bright candles of the small ones to the long slow stars of the giants. We have spoken several times, gently, of the dangers that the young dinosaurs faced, of the way the world thinned out the hatchlings and only a fraction survived to grow large. Let us now turn fully toward this, not to frighten ourselves for we will hold it softly, but to understand it, because it is a crucial part of the truth about how long the dinosaurs lived. The story of a dinosaur's lifespan is not only the story of how long they could live. It is also the story of how few of them lived that long at all. Consider the great sea of eggs that the dinosaurs laid. Many kinds of dinosaurs laid not just a few eggs but a great many, clutch after clutch across their lives, dozens upon dozens of eggs, hundreds over a long lifetime. If even most of those eggs had hatched and grown to adulthood, the world would have been overwhelmed, buried beneath dinosaurs, with no room and no food for them all. But of course this did not happen. The world stayed in balance. And the reason it stayed in balance is that the vast majority of those eggs and hatchlings never reached adulthood at all. Picture a clutch of eggs in its nest. Of all those eggs, some might not hatch at all, lost to the cold or the damp or the patient appetite of an egg-eating creature who found the nest. Of those that did hatch, the small vulnerable hatchlings faced a world full of dangers. They were tiny, and to the predators of the ancient world, a baby dinosaur was a perfect meal, small enough to catch, soft enough to swallow, abundant enough to make hunting them worthwhile. Many hatchlings were taken in their first days, their first weeks, their first months. The early life of a dinosaur was a gauntlet and most did not make it through. This is why the fast growth we spoke of mattered so very much. Every day that a young dinosaur survived, it grew a little larger and every bit of size made it a little safer. The race was on from the moment of hatching, the desperate race to grow large enough to be beyond the reach of the smaller predators, large enough that hunting it became more trouble than it was worth. The hatchlings that grew fastest had the best chance of winning this race, of crossing the dangerous threshold into the relative safety of size. And so the slow growers were weeded out, generation after generation, and the dinosaurs became the fast-growing creatures we have come to know. But even fast growth could not save them all. The thinning was relentless. By the time a cohort of hatchlings had grown to half their adult size, only a small fraction of the original clutch remained. By the time they reached full adulthood, only a precious few were left, the lucky ones, the survivors, the ones who had run the gauntlet and lived. For every great adult dinosaur that strode across the ancient landscape, there had been many siblings, many nestmates, who never made it past those first dangerous years. There is a strange and gentle mathematics in this, and it shapes the answer to our central question. When we ask how long a dinosaur lived, the honest answer must account for all the dinosaurs, not just the survivors. And if we count all of them, including the countless hatchlings who died young, then the average lifespan of a dinosaur was actually very short, because so many of them died in their first year. Most dinosaurs that ever hatched lived only a brief time, claimed by the dangers of youth. But the ones who survived those dangers, who crossed the threshold into adulthood, could go on to live the long full lives we have been exploring, the decades of the giants, the years of the horned and the armored, the respectable spans of the duck-billed multitudes. It is a little like the lives of many wild animals today, and indeed like the lives of humans in ages past. In the natural world, the most dangerous time of life is very often the beginning. Among many animals, the great majority of deaths happen in infancy, in the first vulnerable days and weeks, and those who survive that perilous beginning can go on to live long full lives. The dinosaurs followed this same ancient pattern. Their early years were a narrow and dangerous gate and only a fraction passed through it. But those who did pass through entered a wider and safer world, where the years could stretch on and on. Let us hold this gently without fear. The thinning of the young is not a cruelty but simply the way of the living world, the way that life balances itself, the way that abundance is kept in check so that the world is not overwhelmed. Every creature that has ever lived has been shaped by this ancient arithmetic. And there is even a kind of beauty in it, in the great fountain of new life pouring forth each season, in the countless eggs and hatchlings, in the abundance and the generosity of it, even though only a few would grow to greatness. Life poured itself out lavishly in the age of the dinosaurs, holding nothing back, trusting that from the multitude, a few would survive and carry the lineage forward. And carry it forward they did, across 165 million years, generation after generation, clutch after clutch, the great fountain of dinosaur life pouring forth season after season for longer than we can possibly imagine. The thinning was relentless, but the abundance was greater still, and so the dinosaurs endured and thrived and ruled the earth for an age beyond all reckoning. Each individual life was uncertain, each hatchling a gamble, but the great river of dinosaur life flowed on, unbroken, through all those countless ages. Rest now with this thought softly. The young faced long odds, but life was generous, and the survivors lived full and lengthy lives. The river flowed on. The dinosaurs endured. And from that great ancient abundance, that lavish pouring forth of life, came 165 million years of dinosaurs walking the earth. Let the thought settle over you like a warm blanket, the thought of life so abundant, so generous, so enduring, that even after all the thinning, even after all the dangers, it flowed on unbroken for an age beyond imagining. Let us do something now that we have been building toward all this long quiet evening. Let us follow a single dinosaur through the entire arc of its life, from the egg to the very end, so that the years we have been counting take on the shape of a real life lived. We will follow a sauropod, one of the great long-necked giants, because their lives were the longest and the most spacious, and there is no better creature to accompany us as we drift toward the deepest part of sleep. Let us call her, for our story, simply the long-necked one, and let us walk beside her through her many decades. She begins, as all of them did, inside a small egg in a warm nest, one of many eggs laid in a shallow scrape in the earth at the edge of an ancient forest. Around her, in the other eggs, are her nest mates, dozens of them, all waiting in the warmth of the buried clutch. The world outside is green and humid and loud with the calls of unseen creatures. And then one day she begins to stir, to scratch at the inner wall of her shell, to work her way out into the light. She breaks free, blinking, tiny, a creature smaller than a house cat, and takes her first uncertain steps into a world far larger than she can comprehend. In these first days she is desperately vulnerable. She is small and the world is full of mouths. She does not have the protection of great size, not yet. Perhaps she stays close to the few other hatchlings who survived, finding a thin safety in their small numbers. Perhaps she hides among the ferns, keeping low, keeping still, learning already the ancient lessons of survival. Many of her nest mates do not make it through these first weeks. They are taken by the swift small predators, claimed by hunger or accident or the simple hard luck of being small in a dangerous world. But she survives, our long-necked one. By luck or by instinct or by some small advantage of strength, she lives through the gauntlet of her earliest days. And then she begins to grow. Oh, how she grows! Through her first years she shoots upward in size, her body building bone and muscle at a tremendous rate, her neck lengthening, her legs thickening, her whole frame expanding toward the great size that awaits her. She eats constantly, cropping the soft low vegetation, then reaching higher and higher as her neck grows longer. Each season she is larger than the last, each year she has climbed further up the long ladder of growth toward adulthood. And with each increase in size she grows a little safer, a little further beyond the reach of the predators who threatened her youth. By the time she has lived 10 years she is already a large animal, far too big for the small predators, though still not safe from the greatest hunters. She moves now with a herd of her own kind, the great long-necked giants traveling together across the landscape, and within the herd she finds belonging and protection. The old and experienced lead the way to the best feeding grounds. The young are sheltered in the center. She has her place among them, growing still, learning the rhythms of the herd, the slow patient ways of her gentle kind. The years pass slowly, peacefully. By the time she has lived 20 years she has reached something close to her full size, an enormous creature now, longer than several wagons placed end to end, taller than the tallest trees of the forest when she lifts her great neck to feed. And with this great size comes a profound and lasting safety. No predator can threaten a fully grown sauropod. She has passed beyond danger into the long calm plateau of adulthood, where the years stretch out before her in unhurried abundance. What does she do with all these years, our long-necked one? She eats, mostly, for a body so large requires a great deal of fuel. She spends her days moving slowly through the ancient forests and plains, cropping vegetation, swallowing it whole, letting the slow vats of her great stomach do their patient work. She moves with the herd, the generations folded together, the young growing up within the protective circle of the adults as she once did. She feels the seasons turn, the wet seasons and the dry, the times of plenty and the leaner times, each one laying down its faithful ring inside her bones, each one a year survived, a year added to her long and lengthening life. Year after year she lives in the great calm of her maturity. 30 years. 40 years. She has now lived longer than most creatures of her world could ever dream. She has seen countless smaller animals born and die within the span of her single ongoing life. She has watched the herd change around her, the old ones passing on, the young ones growing up to take their places, the great river of her kind flowing on through the generations while she endures, a fixed point, a living monument to the long slow patience of her sort. 50 years. 60. She is old now, our long-necked one of the great elders of her herd, her body bearing the marks of her long life, perhaps a little slower than she once was, perhaps carrying the small injuries and wear that accumulate across so many decades. But she endures still, moving with the herd, feeding beneath the warm sky, her great body a fortress that the years have not yet brought down. Inside her bones, the rings have stacked up by the dozen, decade upon decade, a faithful record of one of the longest lives that the land has ever known. And then, at last, after all those years, after all those decades of feeding and walking and resting beneath the ancient sun, the long-necked one comes to the end of her span. Perhaps she simply grows too old, her great body finally wearing down after 60 or 70 years of life. Perhaps illness takes her or the slow decline of age. However it comes gently in our telling, the natural end of a long and full and remarkable life. She lies down for the last time in some quiet place, and her great heart slows and stops, and her long life comes peacefully to its close. But her story does not end there, not entirely. For her great body, settling into the soft earth or the river mud, begins the slow transformation that will carry her across the ages to us. The flesh fades, but the bones remain, and the bones, over millions upon millions of years, turn slowly to stone, preserving within them the faithful record of all her many years. And there she rests, deep in the rock, for 66 million years and more, until at last, in our own age, someone finds her, lifts her ancient bones from the earth, slices a thin sliver from one of them, and bends over a microscope to count the rings. 1, 2, 3. Counting the years of a life lived so long ago that the very continents have moved since then. Counting the decades of the long-necked one, reading her story at last so very long after she lived it. There is a great peace in this, the deepest piece of all our story tonight. A life so long and full, lived out in completeness across the decades, and then preserved faithfully, patiently, across an unimaginable gulf of time so that even now, even tonight, we can know that she lived, that she grew, that she endured for 60 or 70 years beneath a sun that no human ever saw. Her years were not lost. They are still counted, still remembered, still hers. And in knowing her story, in following her from the egg to the end, we have touched, however gently, the truth of how long a dinosaur lived. Rest now beside her, our long-necked one, in the great calm of her long life and her long rest. Let her slow patient years wash over you like a gentle tide. There is no hurry, there never was. The decades pass slowly, the rings stack up gently, and the great life unfolds in its own unhurried time, exactly as it was meant to. Breathe slowly, and let the long quiet life of the giant carry you toward your own deep rest. We have spent our long evening among the individual lives of the dinosaurs, following them from the egg to the end, counting their years one by one. Now let us pull back, gently, and consider the other lifespan we spoke of at the very beginning, the lifespan of the dinosaurs as a whole, the great age of the ruling house, the span of the entire dynasty. For if a single great dinosaur could live for the better part of a century, the dynasty of all the dinosaurs together lived for a span so vast that it makes even the longest individual life seem like a single heartbeat. The dinosaurs ruled the land for something close to 165 million years. Let us sit with that number, slowly, the way we sat with the long life of the sauropod. 165 million years. It is a number so large that the mind cannot truly grasp it, and so we must approach it gently, with comparisons, the way we approach a great mountain by walking slowly toward it across the plain. Consider how long humans have been on the earth. Our own kind, in something like our modern form, has existed for perhaps a few 100,000 years. And all of recorded human history, everything from the first written words to this very moment, all the empires and the cities and the discoveries and the songs, all of that fits within the last 5 or 6,000 years. The dinosaurs ruled for 165 million years. That is more than 30,000 times the length of all recorded human history. If all of human history were a single day, the reign of the dinosaurs would stretch on for nearly a century. The dinosaurs were so successful, so enduring, that they ruled the land through changes that would have ended a lesser dynasty many times over. During their long reign, the continents themselves drifted across the face of the earth, breaking apart and rearranging, the very map of the world transforming beneath the feet of the dinosaurs. Mountain ranges rose and eroded away. Seas opened and closed. The climate shifted and changed across the ages. And through all of it, the dinosaurs endured, adapting, changing, flowing onward through the generations, ruling the land through it all. And they changed enormously across that vast span of time. The dinosaurs of the early ages were not the same as the dinosaurs of the later ages. Whole kinds rose and flourished and faded, replaced by new kinds across the long reign. The famous tyrant king, that great predator we spoke of, lived only in the final chapter of the dinosaur story, in the last few million years before the end. The great plated dinosaurs with the bony plates along their backs lived in an earlier age and were long gone before the tyrant king ever appeared. The gap in time between some kinds of dinosaurs and other kinds of dinosaurs is greater than the gap in time between the last dinosaurs and us. The dinosaurs were not a single moment but a vast unfolding pageant, kind after kind rising and passing across more than 100 million years. This is one of the great surprises that rewards slow contemplation. We tend to imagine all the dinosaurs together, mingling in one great prehistoric world, the plated ones and the horned ones and the tyrant king all sharing the same landscape. But in truth they were spread across an almost unimaginable depth of time, separated from one another by millions upon millions of years, each kind belonging to its own age, its own chapter in the long story of the dinosaur dynasty. The reign was so vast that it contained many worlds within it, age upon age, each with its own cast of creatures, each flowing into the next across the slow turning of deep time. What ended this great dynasty at last? After 165 million years of rule, what could possibly bring it to a close? The answer, as you very likely know, came from the sky. Around 66 million years ago, a great rock from space, an asteroid larger than a mountain, struck the Earth with unimaginable force. The impact and its aftermath transformed the world in a geological instant, darkening the skies, disrupting the climate, collapsing the great food chains upon which the dinosaurs depended. And so, after their immense and glorious reign, the great dinosaurs passed from the earth, all but the one branch that had taken to the air and become the birds. But let us not dwell on the ending tonight, not in sorrow. For 165 million years is a reign beyond all reckoning, a span of dominance that no other group of large land animals has ever matched before or since. The dinosaurs did not fail. They did not fade away through weakness. They ruled the land more completely and for far longer than any creature that came after them, including ourselves. We have ruled, if we can even call it that, for the merest sliver of time, a few thousand years of civilization against their 165 million years of dominion. By the measure of endurance, the dinosaurs are among the most successful creatures the earth has ever produced. And in a sense, as we have already seen, the dynasty never truly ended at all. The birds carried it forward, the one surviving branch of the great family, flying on into our own age, singing in our trees, soaring through our skies. The reign of the dinosaurs continues, transformed, in every bird that lives today. The dynasty that began so very long ago, that ruled through the drifting of continents and the rising of mountains, that endured for 165 million years, flows on still, in feathered form into the present moment. The great story has not ended. It has only changed its shape. Let us rest now with the vastness of it, the great dynasty stretching across 165 million years, age upon age, kind after kind, the continents drifting and the mountains rising and falling, the dinosaurs flowing on through it all, generation after generation, for a span of time so vast that the mind grows quiet and still in the face of it. There is a deep peace in such vastness, in such endurance, in such a long unbroken flowing of life across the ages. Let that peace settle over you, the peace of deep time, the peace of a dynasty that ruled for 165 million years and whose descendants sing outside your window even now. We learned earlier that the rings inside a dinosaur's bones can tell us its age, the way the rings of a tree tell us the years it lived. But these rings, these faithful records hidden inside the calcified remains, tell us far more than simply how many years passed. They are not just a calendar. They are a diary, a detailed account of the life the animal lived. And learning to read the fuller story they contain is one of the gentlest and most rewarding kinds of detective work there is. So let us return to the rings slowly and learn to read them more deeply, the way a patient scholar reads an ancient text. Consider first what the spacing of the rings can tell us. In the early years of a young dinosaur's life, when it was growing fast, the rings are spaced far apart, with wide bands of bone between them. This wide spacing is the signature of rapid growth, of a body adding size at a tremendous rate, of the furious growing of youth. But as the animal aged and approached its full size, the rings began to crowd closer together, the bands of bone between them growing thinner and thinner. This crowding is the signature of slowing growth, of an animal nearing its adult size, its growing days behind it, settling into the long plateau of maturity. By reading the spacing of the rings, then, scientists can see not just how long an animal lived but how its growth changed across its life, when it grew fastest, when it slowed, when it reached its full size. In the very oldest individuals, the rings near the outer edge of the bone are crowded so tightly together that they nearly merge into a single dense band. This crowded outer region has a name among scientists, but more importantly it has a meaning. It tells us that the animal had reached its full size and had stopped growing, or nearly so, and was living on in the maturity of old age. When scientists find this crowded outer band, they know they are looking at an animal that lived to a ripe age, an elder of its kind, a survivor of many years. It is, in a sense, the mark of old age written into the bone, the sign that the animal had lived a full and lengthy life. The rings can tell us about the hard times too, the lean years and the seasons of hardship. A year of drought, a year of scarcity, a year when food was hard to find, all of these leave their mark in the bone, a thinner band, a darker line, a record of a difficult season weathered and survived. Sometimes the bones even record times of injury or illness, periods when the body diverted its resources away from growth toward healing, leaving a telltale disruption in the smooth progression of the rings. To read these signs is to read the very biography of the animal, the good years and the bad, the times of plenty and the times of trial, all faithfully recorded in the patient stone. There is something profoundly moving in this when you sit with it quietly. Each of these ancient creatures lived a particular life, with its own particular fortunes, its own good years and hard years, its own seasons of abundance and seasons of struggle. And all of that, the whole texture of an individual life, is still there written in the bone, waiting to be read. We can look at the remains of a single dinosaur and know that it endured a hard season in its 7th year, that it grew most rapidly between its 3rd and 10th years, that it reached its full size around its 20th year, that it lived on for decades afterward in the calm of maturity. We can know the shape of a life lived 66 million years ago, in a world utterly vanished, simply by reading the faithful diary that the animal carried, all unknowing, inside its own bones. The scientists who do this work are a particular kind of patient. They take the precious fossils, often the only remains of their kind ever found, and from them they cut a thin section, a sliver of ancient bone. This is delicate and sometimes difficult work, for the fossils are irreplaceable, and to cut into one is a serious decision. But the slice, once made, opens a window that no other method can provide. The thin section is mounted and polished until light passes through it, and then placed beneath the microscope, where the rings reveal themselves, the faithful record of the years rising up out of the stone for eyes to read at last. Imagine being one of these patient scholars, bent over the microscope late into the quiet evening, slowly counting the rings of a creature that died before the flowers had fully spread across the world. The room is quiet. The only sound is the soft hum of the lamp, the gentle turning of the focus. And there, in the circle of light, the years of an ancient life reveal themselves, one ring at a time, a conversation across an unimaginable gulf of time between a living person and a creature long turned to stone. There is a deep and gentle intimacy in this work, a kind of communion with the deep past, a tending of the memory of lives that would otherwise be entirely lost. And the work is never quite finished, which is part of its quiet beauty. Each new fossil that is found, each new bone that is sliced and read, adds another life to the great accumulating record, another data point in our slowly growing understanding of how the dinosaurs lived and how long. The picture grows clearer year by year, but it is never complete, never final. There are always more bones in the rock, more lives waiting to be read, more years waiting to be counted. The diary of the dinosaurs is vast beyond all reckoning, scattered across the rocks of every continent, and we have read only the smallest fraction of it. The rest waits, patient as ever, holding the years of countless ancient lives, ready to be read by those patient enough to listen. Let us rest now with the image of the rings, the faithful diary in the bone, recording not just the years but the whole texture of an ancient life, the fast growth of youth and the slow plateau of age, the good seasons and the hard ones, all preserved across the vast gulf of time, all still there, still waiting, still faithful. There is such peace in the thought of it, the thought that nothing is truly lost, that the years are still counted, that even now, even tonight, somewhere a patient scholar may be bent over a microscope, reading the gentle diary of a creature that lived and grew and aged in a world we can only dream of. The years are not lost. They never were. They are simply waiting to be read. We have wandered tonight among the many different lifespans of the dinosaurs, from the brief bright candles of the small swift ones to the long slow stars of the great giants. Let us now widen our gaze still further and consider how the lifespans of the dinosaurs fit into the great tapestry of all animal life, then and now, across the whole sweep of living things. For there is a deep order to it, a gentle pattern that runs through all of life, and contemplating that pattern is a wonderfully soothing thing to do as the mind grows soft and slow. The great rule, the one we have touched on several times tonight, is this. The pace of a life tends to follow the size of the body. Small animals, as a rule, live fast and briefly. Large animals live slow and long. This rule held among the dinosaurs, and it holds among the animals of today, a deep and ancient pattern that seems to run through the very fabric of living things. Consider the smallest creatures of our own world. A tiny shrew no larger than your thumb lives a life of furious speed. Its little heart beats hundreds of times each minute, racing along at a tremendous pace. It must eat almost constantly to fuel its frantic metabolism, and it burns through its life so quickly that it lives perhaps only a year or two before its brief candle is spent. The smallest birds, the tiniest hummingbirds, live at a similar furious pace, their hearts racing, their lives brief and bright. This is the rhythm of the very small, the fast bright burning that we saw in the small swift dinosaurs of old. Now consider the largest creatures. The great whales of our oceans, the largest animals that have ever lived, even larger than the great sauropods, live at the opposite extreme. Their enormous hearts beat slowly, ponderously, just a few times each minute. Their great bodies burn fuel at a gentle, economical pace. And they live for a very long time indeed, some of the great whales reaching ages of 100 years, 200 years, and the very longest lived among them perhaps beyond even that. They are the slowest, longest living of all, the great slow stars of the modern world, just as the sauropods were the great slow stars of the ancient one. Between these extremes lie all the other animals, arranged along the great gradient of size and time. The mouse and the elephant, the rabbit and the rhinoceros, the small bird and the great albatross. In each case, the larger animal lives slower and longer, the smaller one faster and briefer. It is one of the most reliable patterns in all of biology, this link between size and the pace of life, and it reaches back across the ages to govern the dinosaurs just as it governs the creatures of today. Why should this be so? Why should size and lifespan be so deeply linked? Part of the answer lies in the simple physics of being large or small. A small body loses heat quickly, for it has a great deal of surface area compared to its volume, and so it must burn fuel furiously just to stay warm and alive. A large body holds its heat far better, with much less surface area for its great volume, and so it can burn fuel gently and still maintain itself. The small animal lives in a constant race against the loss of heat and energy, burning bright and fast, while the large animal can afford to take its time, to live slowly, to endure. The pace of life is written, in part, in the very geometry of the body. And part of the answer lies in safety, which we have touched on before. A large animal is safer, harder to kill, less troubled by predators, and so it can afford to invest in a long life, to grow slowly and live long, secure in its great size. A small animal lives always in danger, always at risk of being eaten, and so there is little point in building a body meant to last for decades when it will likely be claimed by a predator within a year or two. The small animal lives fast and reproduces quickly, racing to pass on its life before danger claims it, while the large animal can take the slow, patient path, trusting in its size to carry it safely through the long years. Both strategies work. Both are answers to the great challenge of staying alive. And both ran through the dinosaur world just as they run through ours. There is a deep comfort, I find, in seeing the dinosaurs take their place within this great timeless pattern. They were not strange exceptions, not creatures apart, but participants in the same grand order that governs all of life, then and now. The small dinosaurs lived fast and briefly like the shrews and the small birds of today. The great dinosaurs lived slow and long like the whales and the great tortoises and the long-lived parrots of our own age. The same rhythms, the same patterns, the same deep order, flowing unbroken across more than 100 million years, linking the vanished giants of the deep past to the living creatures of our own gardens and oceans and skies. When you watch a tiny bird flit through the trees, living its brief furious life, you are watching the same ancient rhythm that governed the small swift dinosaurs. When you contemplate a great whale moving slowly through the deep ocean, living across a century or more, you are contemplating the same ancient rhythm that governed the great slow sauropods. The dinosaurs are gone, most of them, but the patterns that shaped their lives endure, woven into the very fabric of living things, flowing on through every creature that breathes and grows and ages upon the earth. Let us rest now with this great gentle order, the deep pattern that links all of life across all the ages, the small living fast and the large living slow, the same rhythm flowing on unbroken from the deep past into the present moment. There is such peace in pattern, such comfort in order, such restfulness in knowing that the world is woven through with deep and reliable rhythms that have held steady across more than 100 million years. Let that order settle over you like a gentle hand, the order of size and time, of fast and slow, of brief and long, the great timeless pattern that governed the dinosaurs and governs us still. Breathe slowly, in the rhythm of the large and the long-lived, and let the deep order of life carry you toward your rest. Each dinosaur, across its decades of life, lived through many turnings of the world. The seasons came and went, the years stacked up inside the bones, and the great slow drama of the ancient earth unfolded around them, day after day, season after season. Let us spend a while now simply imagining the worlds that the dinosaurs lived through across their long lives, the changing scenery of their many years, for there is great peace in picturing these vanished landscapes, and in walking through them slowly in the mind. Imagine first a dinosaur living through the cycle of a single year, that great wheel of the seasons that turned again and again across its life. In the warm and rainy season, the world grew lush and green, the plants surging up in abundance, the rivers running full, the air thick and humid and alive. This was the season of plenty, when food was everywhere, when the herds grew fat and the young grew fast, when the bones laid down their wide bands of rapid growth. The world was generous in this season, pouring forth life and food, and the dinosaurs feasted and grew and flourished beneath the warm wet skies. And then the dry season would come, or in some places the cooler season, and the world would change its character entirely. The rains would ease, the rivers would shrink, the lush growth would wither and brown. Food grew scarcer, harder to find, and the great herds would have to range further to feed, to make do with less, to draw upon the reserves they had built up in the season of plenty. This was the leaner time, the season of careful endurance, when the bones laid down their thin dark lines of slowed growth. The dinosaurs weathered these seasons as all animals must, drawing on their strength, waiting for the rains to return. And the rains always did return, eventually, and the great wheel would turn again, plenty following scarcity following plenty, around and around year after year, decade after decade, for the whole length of a dinosaur's life. A great sauropod living for 70 years would have lived through 70 of these turnings, 70 cycles of plenty and scarcity, 70 wet seasons and 70 dry, each one recorded faithfully in its bones. Imagine living through 70 turnings of that great seasonal wheel, watching the world grow lush and then sparse and then lush again over and over, the rhythm of it as steady and familiar as your own slow breathing. But across the truly long spans of the dinosaur reign, even greater changes unfolded, changes far slower than the seasons but no less real. The very continents drifted across the face of the earth during the age of the dinosaurs, slowly, imperceptibly, at the pace of growing fingernails, but relentlessly across the millions of years. A great landmass that had been joined together slowly split apart, new seas opening between the drifting fragments, the map of the world transforming across the ages. No single dinosaur could perceive this, of course, for it happened far too slowly for any one life to notice. But across the long reign of the dynasty, the world the dinosaurs lived in was reshaped entirely, the lands rearranged, the seas opened and closed, the very geography of the planet transformed beneath their feet. The climate too shifted across the great span of the dinosaur reign. There were ages that were warmer and ages that were cooler, ages that were wetter and ages that were drier. The kinds of plants changed across the ages, new sorts of vegetation rising to prominence, the very forest transforming across the millions of years. In the later ages of the dinosaurs, something entirely new appeared, the first flowering plants, spreading slowly across the world, bringing color and new kinds of food to the ancient landscapes. The dinosaurs of the early ages lived in a world without flowers, a world of ferns and cone-bearing trees, while the dinosaurs of the later ages lived among the spreading blossoms, the world growing slowly more colorful around them across the long unfolding of deep time. Picture, then, the great changing pageant of the dinosaur world, the slow transformation of the landscape across the ages. Picture the early ages, the world of ferns and conifers, the great plated dinosaurs moving through forests without a single flower. Picture the Middle Ages, the giants growing ever larger, the herds spreading across the wide green plains. Picture the later ages, the world of flowers and the famous tyrant king and the great horned herds, the dinosaur world at its final flourishing, richer and more varied than ever before. Age upon age, world upon world, each flowing into the next across the slow turning of deep time, the dinosaurs flowing on through all of it, adapting, changing, enduring. And through all these changing worlds, the individual dinosaurs lived their individual lives, each one belonging to its own particular age, its own particular landscape, its own particular world. The long-necked one we followed earlier lived through her own 70 turnings of the seasonal wheel, in her own particular corner of her own particular age, knowing nothing of the ages that came before her or the ages that would come after. She knew only her own world, her own herd, her own seasons, her own handful of decades beneath her own familiar sky. And that was enough. That was a full and complete life, lived in its own time, in its own place, beneath its own particular stars. There is something deeply restful in imagining these vanished worlds, the slow turning of ancient seasons, the imperceptible drifting of continents, the gradual transformation of the landscape across the ages. It puts our own restless hurry into a gentler perspective, this contemplation of changes so vast and so slow that no single life could ever perceive them. The world changes always, but it changes slowly, patiently, at the pace of drifting continents and spreading flowers, and there is no need to hurry, no need to rush, no need to do anything at all but breathe slowly and let the great slow changes unfold in their own unhurried time. Let us rest now among the changing worlds of the dinosaurs, the turning seasons and the drifting continents and the slow spreading of the flowers across the ancient earth. Let the great slow changes wash over you like a tide that takes 10,000 years to turn. There is no hurry in deep time. There is only the slow patient unfolding, the gentle turning of the ages, the worlds flowing one into the next across spans so vast that the mind grows still and quiet in the face of them. Breathe slowly in the rhythm of the drifting continents, and let the changing worlds of the dinosaurs carry you gently toward your rest. We have spoken much of birth and growth, of the egg in the swift years of youth, of reaching full size and entering the long plateau of maturity. But what of the other end of life? What of old age in the age of dinosaurs? What was it like to be an ancient creature, a survivor of many decades, an elder of one's kind in the long-ago world? Let us turn now gently to the twilight of the dinosaur life, the slow soft ending of those long ancient years, for there is a particular tenderness in contemplating old age, and a particular peace. First, we must understand that simply reaching old age was itself a great achievement, a thing won by only a fortunate few. We have spoken of the long odds of dinosaur life, of how most hatchlings never survived their first year, of how the world thinned out the young with quiet relentlessness. To grow old, then, an animal had to first survive all of that, the dangerous early years, the perilous growth toward adulthood, the many hazards of a long life lived in a wild and dangerous world. Old age was the reward for a lifetime of survival, the prize won by the luckiest and the hardiest and the most fortunate, the few who had run the full gauntlet of life and emerged at last into their twilight years. What did old age look like for a dinosaur? For the great giants, the long-lived sauropods, old age came slowly and gently. Having reached their full enormous size in their 20s, they lived on for decades more in the calm safety of their maturity, and old age crept up on them only gradually across the long slow years. An old sauropod was much like a young adult sauropod in many ways, still enormous, still safe from predators, still moving with the herd. But the years took their gentle toll. Its body bore the marks of its long life, perhaps old healed injuries, perhaps the slow wear of decades of feeding and walking. Its bones, inside, were crowded with the rings of many years, the dense outer bands marking an animal that had stopped growing long ago and was living on in the deep maturity of great age. It was, perhaps, a little slower than it had once been, a little more worn, but still magnificent, still enduring, an elder of its great and gentle kind. For the great predators, old age was harder won and likely harder lived. We saw that even the mighty tyrant king lived only about 30 years, and that its life was full of danger and injury. An old tyrant king in its late 20s was a battle-scarred veteran, its body a record of a lifetime of hunting and struggle. Its bones often show the accumulated injuries of a hard life, healed fractures, signs of infection, the wear and tear of decades spent as an active and powerful predator. To grow old as a great predator was to bear the marks of 1,000 hunts, 1,000 struggles, 1,000 narrow escapes. The old predator was a survivor in the truest sense, a creature that had endured everything its dangerous life could throw at it and lived, somehow, into its twilight years. And what of the end itself? How did the dinosaurs die, those who lived long enough to grow old? For most of them, in the natural course of things, the end came as it comes to all aging creatures, gently and gradually, the slow winding down of a body that had lived its full span. Perhaps the great heart finally tired after its many decades of beating. Perhaps illness took the aging body as illness so often takes the old. Perhaps the animal simply grew too worn, too weak, too tired to keep pace with the herd, and fell behind, and lay down at last in some quiet place to rest. However it came, for those who reached old age, The end was likely the natural and unhurried close of a long and complete life, the gentle setting of a sun that had risen long ago and shone across many decades. There is a great peace in this image, the peace of a long life come to its natural close. We so often imagine the dinosaurs in violence, in struggle, in the drama of the hunt and the battle. But the truth, for the fortunate ones who reached old age, was likely far gentler. A long life lived, a full span of years enjoyed, and then a quiet ending, the soft close of a life that had run its course. The old sauropod lying down for the last time after 70 years beneath the warm sky. The old herd member, surrounded perhaps by the great bodies of its kind, settling into its final rest after a long life of belonging. There is tenderness in these images and peace and a kind of completion. And here is a gentle thought to hold as we contemplate the twilight of these ancient lives. Every creature that grows old has, by definition, lived a long life, a full life, a life that survived all the dangers and reached the far shore of age. To grow old is to have won, to have endured, to have lived fully and completely through all the seasons of a life. The old dinosaurs, the great elders of their kinds, were the champions of survival, the ones who had lived through everything and reached at last the calm of their twilight years. Their old age was not a sad thing but a triumphant one, the crowning of a long life well lived, the reward for a lifetime of endurance. Let us rest now in the twilight of the dinosaur life, in the gentle calm of old age in the ancient world. Picture the old sauropod in the golden light of an ancient evening, her 70 years behind her, her great body bearing the marks of her long life, moving slowly and contentedly among the herd in the soft warm light. She has lived fully. She has endured. She has reached the far shore of a long life, and now, in her twilight, there is only peace, only the gentle calm of a life well lived, only the soft golden light of the ancient evening settling over her great and ancient form. Let that peace settle over you too, the peace of a long life come to its gentle close, the deep calm of the twilight years, and let it carry you softly toward your own deep rest. We have spoken in general terms of the great kinds of dinosaurs, the giants and the predators, the armored and the horned. But perhaps you would like to know the particular spans of some of the most famous dinosaurs, the ones whose names you have known since childhood. Let us gather them together now, one by one like old friends, and learn the shape of each one's allotted years. We will move slowly, gently, considering each in turn, and you may let your mind rest on whichever ones bring you the most comfort. Let us begin with the great tyrant king, the most famous dinosaur of all, the towering predator with the massive head and the tiny arms and the bone-crushing jaws. We have spoken of it already, but let us hold it once more in our gentle attention. The tyrant king lived at most to around its late 20s or early 30s. It grew through a furious spurt in its teenage years, ballooning in size, and then reigned briefly at its full and terrible size before its relatively short life came to its end. 30 years, give or take, for the king of predators. A life lived hard and fast and brilliant, blazing across just 3 decades before it was spent. Now let us turn to the great long-necked giant, perhaps the gentle one with the very long neck and the small head and the whip-like tail, or one of its enormous cousins. These were the longest-lived of all the dinosaurs, as we have learned, reaching ages of many decades, perhaps 60 or 70 years, perhaps even approaching a century for the very largest. The giant lived slowly and long, growing across decades, enduring in the calm of its great size, living out a span as long as our own or longer. If the tyrant king was the brief bright candle, the great sauropod was the long slow star, burning gently across the better part of a century. Consider next the great plated dinosaur, that distinctive creature with the row of bony plates marching down its back and the cluster of spikes at the end of its tail. This dinosaur lived in an earlier age than the tyrant king, long before it, and it lived a span of perhaps a couple of decades, growing through its youth and enduring into a respectable maturity. It was a creature of moderate lifespan, neither the briefest nor the longest, living its couple of decades among the ferns and the conifers of its early age, its plated back catching the ancient sunlight. Consider the great three-horned dinosaur, that magnificent creature with the 3 horns upon its face and the vast bony frill rising up behind its head. This one lived alongside the tyrant king in the very last age of the dinosaurs, and it too lived a span of perhaps a decade or two, growing through its youth, its horns and frills slowly changing shape as it aged, until it reached its full and formidable maturity. It moved in great herds, finding safety in numbers and in its own impressive armament, and it lived out its decade or two among the multitudes of its kind, one of the most successful and numerous of the late dinosaurs. Consider the swift small hunters, the quick and clever pack-hunting predators with the sharp claws and the keen eyes. These lived the briefest lives of all, perhaps only a handful of years, a decade at most for the most fortunate. They lived fast and quick, their little candle burning bright, reaching maturity within a few years and living out their swift brief spans among the undergrowth, hunting and darting and surviving as best they could in their dangerous quick-lived world. Consider the great duck-billed dinosaurs, the gentle multitudes with the flattened snouts and the curious crests. These lived perhaps a decade or two, growing swiftly through their youth and enduring into maturity, moving in their great herds, tending their young in their crowded colonies, filling the ancient landscape with their abundant gentle lives. A respectable span, a comfortable middle path, for the most numerous and successful of the plant-eating dinosaurs. And consider, finally, the birds, the living dinosaurs of our own age. Among them we find the full range once more, the same great spectrum we have traced all night. The small songbirds living their brief few years, the great parrots and albatrosses living their many decades, the same ancient pattern of size and time flowing on into the present. The birds carry forward the lifespans of the dinosaurs into our own world, where we can watch them with our own eyes, the brief lives and the long ones, the fast and the slow, the living legacy of the great ancient dynasty. There they are, then, gathered together, the famous dinosaurs in their allotted spans. The tyrant king with its 3 decades, the great sauropod with its possible century, the plated dinosaur and the horned one and the duck-bill with their respectable decades, the swift small hunters with their brief few years, and the birds carrying the whole range forward into our own time. Each one lived the span that suited its kind, the brief for the small and swift, the long for the great and slow, the moderate for those in between. And together they fill the ancient world with a great rich variety of lives, no two kinds quite the same, each finding its own particular rhythm in the great symphony of dinosaur time. Let your mind rest gently on whichever of these old friends brings you the most peace. Perhaps the long slow star of the great sauropod, living its gentle century. Perhaps the patient plated dinosaur among the ancient ferns. Perhaps the great horned herds moving across the plains. Perhaps the gentle duck-bills tending their young in the crowded colonies. Whichever one you choose, let it carry you, let its particular rhythm settle over you, let the shape of its ancient life become the shape of your slowing breath as you drift towards sleep. They are all at rest now, these famous ancient creatures, all of them long since returned to the earth and the stone. And you may rest now too, in their good company, in the gentle gathering of all the dinosaurs in all their many years. We have spent our evening among the dinosaurs at the height of their reign, the great giants and famous predators of the Middle and later ages. But every dynasty has a beginning, and the dinosaurs began as humble creatures indeed, small and unremarkable, living in the shadows of larger and more dominant animals. Let us turn now, gently, to the long beginning of the dinosaurs, to the first of their kind, and consider how their lives and their lifespans may have looked in those distant early days before the dynasty rose to its great heights. The very first dinosaurs appeared a very long time ago, even by the standards of the dinosaur reign, long before the famous giants and predators we know so well. And they were small. The earliest dinosaurs were modest creatures, many of them no larger than a dog or a small child, lightly built, swift on their feet, living as small hunters and opportunists in a world dominated by other kinds of creatures entirely. They were not the rulers of their world, not at first. They were the underdogs, the marginal players, scurrying through the undergrowth while larger and more established animals held sway. What were the lives of these first dinosaurs like, and how long did they live? Being small, they likely lived the brief swift lives that small creatures have always lived, the quick bright candles burning fast through just a handful of years. They grew quickly, matured quickly, lived quickly in the manner of all small active animals. Their lifespans were probably modest, a few years, perhaps a decade for the most fortunate, lived at the fast pace that their small bodies demanded. There were no great giants yet, no long-lived sauropods reaching toward a century. The dinosaurs in their beginning were all small and swift and brief-lived, the long slow lives of the giants still far in the future, still waiting to evolve. But within these small humble beginnings lay the seeds of everything that would come. The early dinosaurs carried certain advantages, certain features that would, across the long ages, allow their descendants to rise to greatness. They walked with their legs held directly beneath their bodies, an upright and efficient posture that let them move well and breathe well and grow large. They had certain features in their bones and their bodies that would prove, across the millions of years, to be enormously successful, capable of being scaled up and adapted and elaborated into the great variety of dinosaurs that would eventually fill the world. The humble early dinosaurs were like the small seeds of a mighty tree, modest in themselves but containing within them the potential for everything that would grow. And grow it did across the long ages. Slowly, across millions upon millions of years, the dinosaurs diversified and expanded, some lineages growing larger, some becoming swift hunters, some becoming great plant eaters, some developing armor or horns or crests or long necks. The small swift beginning gave rise, across the vast unfolding of deep time, to the whole great pageant of dinosaur life, the giants and the predators and the armored and the horned and all the rest. And with the growing size came the growing lifespans, for as the dinosaurs grew larger, the largest of them began to live the long slow lives that great size allows. The dynasty that began with small brief-lived creatures came, across the ages, to include the longest-lived land animals of its world, the great sauropods with their possible centuries. There is something deeply hopeful in this, the long beginning of the dinosaurs, the humble start that grew into such greatness. The mightiest dynasty the land has ever known began with small, unremarkable creatures scurrying through the undergrowth, underdogs in a world ruled by others. And from those humble beginnings, across the patient ages, grew the most successful and enduring group of large land animals in all of history. The great oak from the small seed. The mighty river from the trickling spring. The 165-million-year dynasty from the small swift creatures of the long beginning. It reminds us gently that greatness often has humble origins, that the mightiest things may begin small and unremarkable, that what starts as an underdog may, across the patient unfolding of time, rise to heights that no one could have predicted. The first dinosaurs did not know what they would become. They simply lived their small swift lives, generation after generation, doing what their kind did, surviving as best they could. And across the long ages, the slow patient work of life shaped their descendants into giants and rulers, into the great dynasty that would dominate the land for an age beyond all reckoning. Let us rest now with the humble beginning of the dinosaurs, the small swift creatures of the long ago dawn of the dynasty, scurrying through the undergrowth, living their brief bright lives, carrying within them all unknowing the seeds of the greatness that would come. There is peace in beginnings, in the small humble starts of great things, in the patient unfolding from modest origins to mighty ends. Let that peace settle over you, the peace of the long beginning, the gentle dawn of the great dynasty, and let it carry you softly toward your rest, knowing that from small beginnings across patient time, the greatest things may grow. The mysteries that remain. For all that we have learned tonight, for all the years we have counted and the lives we have traced, there remains a great deal that we do not know about how long the dinosaurs lived. And rather than letting this trouble us, let us embrace it, let us rest in it, for there is a particular peace in mystery, in the knowledge that the ancient world still holds its secrets, that not everything has been uncovered, that wonder still waits in the deep rocks for those patient enough to seek it. Consider, first, the great uncertainty around the very longest-lived dinosaurs. We have said that the great sauropods may have lived 60 years, 70 years, perhaps approaching a century. But these are estimates, careful and educated, yet estimates all the same. The trouble, as we learned, is that the very oldest animals are exactly the ones whose innermost rings have been worn away by time, eroded as the central cavity of the bone widened with age. And so for the very longest-lived individuals, the record is incomplete, the earliest years lost, and scientists must use clever methods to estimate the missing time. The true maximum lifespan of the greatest sauropods remains, in a real sense, an open question, a mystery still waiting to be fully solved. Could the very largest sauropods have lived even longer than we think? Could some of them have reached well beyond a century, living for 120 years, 150, even more? It is possible. The great whales of our own oceans, which are even larger than the sauropods, can live 200 years or more, and the very oldest may reach ages that we are still discovering. If the great sauropods followed the same patterns, scaled to their enormous size, some of them might have lived far longer than our current estimates suggest. We do not know. The rocks have not yet given up this secret. And so the true span of the longest dinosaur lives remains a wonderful open mystery, a question that future discoveries may yet answer. Consider, too, how much we still do not know about the early lives of the dinosaurs, the vulnerable years of youth that left so few fossils behind. The young dinosaurs were small and fragile, and small fragile things rarely fossilize well. The great adults, with their massive durable bones, are far more likely to be preserved and found than the tiny delicate hatchlings. And so our record of dinosaur life is skewed toward the adults, the survivors, the ones who grew large. We know far less about the early years, the dangerous beginning, the brief lives of the many who died young. Whole chapters of the dinosaur life story are missing from our record, lost because the small soft young so rarely turn to stone. There is mystery here too, vast stretches of dinosaur life that we can only dimly glimpse, waiting for the rare and lucky discoveries that might illuminate them. And consider the great question of how the dinosaurs lived from day to day, the texture of their ordinary lives, which leaves so little trace in the rocks. We can count their years, we can trace their growth, we can read the broad shape of their lives from their bones. But the small daily details, the ordinary moments, the way they rested and moved and interacted, much of this remains beyond our reach. Did the great sauropods sleep standing or lying down? How did the herds communicate as they moved across the plains? What did the long ancient days actually feel like hour by hour for the creatures living through them? Much of this we can only imagine, only guess at, only dream of. The ordinary life of the dinosaurs, the daily texture of their many years, remains largely a mystery, a vanished world that we can glimpse only in fragments. But here is the gentle truth that makes all this mystery a comfort rather than a frustration. The work goes on. Every year, new fossils are found, new bones are sliced and read, new methods are developed, new discoveries are made. The picture grows clearer, slowly, patiently, year by year. Mysteries that seemed impenetrable yield, in time, to the patient work of those who seek to understand. The true lifespans of the giants, the early lives of the young, the daily texture of the ancient days, all of these may yet be illuminated by discoveries still to come. The rocks of the world hold countless fossils still unfound, countless lives still uncounted, countless secrets still waiting. And so the story of how long the dinosaurs lived is not a finished story but a living one, growing and deepening with each passing year. There is something deeply restful in this, I find, in the knowledge that the world still holds such mysteries, that the deep past has not given everything up, that wonder still waits in the rocks for those patient enough to seek it. We do not need to know everything tonight. We do not need every answer, every number, every certainty. It is enough to know what we know, to wonder at what we do not, and to rest in the gentle knowledge that the great work of understanding goes on, patiently year by year, uncovering the ancient secrets one fossil at a time. Let us rest now in the mysteries that remain, in the open questions and the unsolved puzzles, in the vast stretches of the dinosaur story that we can only dimly glimpse. There is peace in mystery, comfort in the unknown, restfulness in the knowledge that not everything must be solved tonight or any night. The ancient world keeps its secrets still, holds its hidden years, guards its vanished days. And we may rest, content, in the gentle company of all that we know and all that we have yet to learn, letting the great mysteries of the deep past settle over us like a soft and welcome dark. Let us turn now to a gentle truth about lifespan that we have not yet fully explored, one that connects the length of a single life to the great flowing river of life across the generations. For a lifespan is not just about how long one creature lives. It is also about the rhythm of the generations, the pace at which life renews itself, the turning of the great wheel of birth and growth and reproduction and death that carries life forward across the ages. And contemplating this great rhythm is a wonderfully soothing thing as the mind grows soft and slow. Think of how the length of a life shapes the rhythm of the generations. The small swift dinosaurs, living their brief few years, turned over their generations quickly. A small dinosaur might hatch, grow to maturity within a couple of years, produce its own young and pass on within just a few years more, the whole cycle of its life compressed into a brief swift span. And so the generations of the small dinosaurs followed one another quickly, generation after generation tumbling forward in rapid succession, the river of their life flowing fast and turbulent, renewing itself again and again within just a few years each time. The great sauropods, by contrast, living their slow long lives, turned over their generations slowly. A great sauropod might take 20 years just to reach maturity, then live on for decades more, producing young across many seasons of its long life. The generations of the giants followed one another slowly, ponderously, each one stretching across many years, the river of their life flowing slow and deep and steady, renewing itself only gradually across the long decades. The same great wheel turned for both, the wheel of birth and growth and reproduction and death, but it turned quickly for the small and slowly for the great, fast for the brief-lived and slow for the long-lived. There is a deep order in this, a gentle matching of lifespan to the rhythm of renewal. The creatures that lived briefly renewed themselves quickly, pouring out new generations in rapid succession. The creatures that lived long renewed themselves slowly across the patient decades. And both rhythms worked, both carried life forward, both kept the great river flowing across the ages. The fast rhythm of the small and the slow rhythm of the great, woven together, made up the full music of dinosaur life, the quick bright notes of the small ones and the long deep tones of the giants all sounding together in the great symphony of the ancient world. Consider how this rhythm of generations carried the dinosaurs across their immense reign. 165 million years is a span almost beyond comprehension, but it was crossed, generation by generation, the great wheel turning again and again, life renewing itself season after season for all those countless ages. For the small swift dinosaurs, this meant an almost unimaginable number of generations, millions upon millions of brief lives following one another across the ages, the river flowing fast and renewing itself again and again. For the great slow giants, it meant fewer generations, each one longer, the river flowing slow and deep, but still flowing on, still renewing itself, still carrying the lineage forward across the vast unfolding of time. And here is a tender thought to hold. Each of those countless generations, fast or slow, brief or long, was made up of individual lives, individual creatures, each one hatching from its own egg, living its own days, producing its own young and passing on in its own time. The great river of dinosaur life was made of these individual lives, countless billions of them, each one precious, each one complete, each one a small bright link in the great unbroken chain that stretched across 165 million years. No single life was the whole river. But every single life was part of it, essential to it, a link without which the chain would have broken. There is great peace in this, the peace of belonging to something far larger than oneself, the peace of being one link in a great unbroken chain, one note in a vast and ancient symphony. The individual dinosaur lived its handful of years or its many decades, did its part, passed on its life and gave way to the next generation. And in doing so, it became part of something immense and enduring, the great flowing river of dinosaur life that crossed the ages, the unbroken chain of generations that carried the lineage forward across spans of time beyond all reckoning. Each life was brief against the vastness of deep time. But each life mattered, each life counted, each life was a link in the great chain that endured. Let us rest now with the great rhythm of the generations, the turning of the wheel of birth and growth and renewal, the river of life flowing on across the ages, fast for the small and slow for the great, carrying the dinosaurs forward across their immense reign. There is such peace in belonging, such comfort in continuity, such restfulness in being part of something far larger and more enduring than any single life. Let that peace settle over you, the peace of the great unbroken chain, the great flowing river, the great turning wheel of the generations. You too are part of such a chain, such a river, such a great flowing of life across the ages. Rest in that belonging, and let the great rhythm of the generations carry you gently toward your sleep. Let us do something purely restful now, something for the simple peace of it. Let us spend a single day and night in the ancient world of the dinosaurs, moving slowly through the hours, watching the light change, feeling the rhythm of an ancient day unfold from dawn to dusk to dark. We have learned so much about the years of the dinosaurs. Let us now simply rest within a single one of those days, and let its gentle hours carry us toward sleep. The day begins in darkness, in the cool quiet hour before the dawn. The ancient forest is hushed, the great creatures still at their rest, the air soft and cool and damp with the dew of the night. Slowly, gently, the first light begins to seep into the eastern sky, a pale gray glow that grows by imperceptible degrees toward the gold of morning. The earliest creatures stir, the small ones, the swift ones, beginning to move through the undergrowth as the light slowly grows. The great forest, age upon age old, begins to wake. As the sun rises higher, the ancient world comes fully to life. The great herds begin to move, the long-necked giants rising slowly to their feet, the horned dinosaurs gathering together, the duck-billed multitudes beginning their day of grazing. The warm light spreads across the landscape, gilding the tops of the great conifers, glinting on the slow rivers, warming the broad backs of the great creatures as they begin to feed. The morning is a time of gentle activity, of feeding and moving, of the great slow business of staying alive in the abundant green world. By midday the sun stands high and warm, and the ancient world drowses in the heat. The great sauropods stand among the trees, feeding slowly, their long necks sweeping across the green abundance, their great bodies still and patient in the warm light. The herds rest in the shade where they can find it, the young sheltered among the adults, the whole landscape settling into the slow warm peace of the midday hours. Even the predators rest now in the heat of the day, lying in the shade, waiting for the cooler hours when hunting would be easier. The whole world seems to slow and soften in the warm light of midday, drowsing, resting, breathing slowly in the heat. As the afternoon wears on, the light begins to soften and lengthen, the shadows growing longer across the landscape, the harsh heat of midday easing toward the gentle warmth of evening. The herds begin to move again, feeding in the cooler hours, drinking at the rivers and the lakes. The great sauropods move slowly toward the best feeding grounds, the horned herds graze across the plains, the duck-billed multitudes call to one another with their deep resonant voices as they move through the lengthening light. The afternoon is a time of gentle activity once more, of the great slow rhythms of feeding and moving, all of it bathed now in the golden light of the declining sun. And then comes the evening, the most beautiful hour of the ancient day. The sun sinks low toward the horizon, and the whole world is bathed in deep gold light, the great creatures cast in bronze and amber, their long shadows stretching far across the landscape. The light grows richer, deeper, more golden by the moment, until the whole ancient world seems to glow from within, the forests and the plains and the rivers and the great creatures all gilded in the last warm light of the setting sun. This is the golden hour of the ancient world, the hour of deepest peace, when the day winds slowly down and the great creatures settle toward their rest in the warm fading light. As the sun sinks below the horizon, the gold fades slowly to rose, and the rose to violet, and the violet to the deep blue of dusk. The great herds settle for the night, the long-necked giants folding their legs beneath them, the horned herds gathering close together, the duck-billed multitudes growing quiet as the light fades. The first stars appear in the darkening sky, ancient stars, the same patient stars that have watched over the earth for billions of years. And the ancient world settles into the deep quiet of night, the great creatures at their rest, the forest hushed, the air cooling, the long day done. And in the darkness, beneath the ancient stars, the dinosaurs sleep. The great sauropods rest their enormous bodies, breathing slowly in the dark. The herds rest together, the generations folded close. The predators rest in their hidden places. The whole ancient world sleeps beneath the patient stars, breathing slowly, deeply, in the great quiet of the prehistoric night. The day is done. The light is gone. There is only the soft dark, the patient stars, the gentle breathing of the sleeping world. Rest now, in the deep quiet of the ancient night, among the sleeping dinosaurs beneath the patient stars. The great creatures sleep, and you may sleep too in their good company, in the soft warm dark of the prehistoric world. The day has wound slowly down, the light has faded gently away, and now there is only rest, only peace, only the deep quiet of the sleeping ancient world. Breathe slowly in the rhythm of the sleeping giants, and let the soft dark of the ancient night carry you gently, gently toward your own deep sleep. Why dinosaurs were not like the reptiles of today. It is tempting when we imagine the dinosaurs, to picture them as simply very large versions of the reptiles we know today, great scaly lizards basking in the ancient sun, slow and cold and sluggish. But the more we learn, the more we discover that the dinosaurs were something quite different, something all their own, and understanding this difference deepens our understanding of how they lived and how long. So let us spend a gentle while contrasting the dinosaurs with the reptiles of today, slowly, the way one compares two old paintings hung side by side. Consider the reptiles of our own world, the lizards and the crocodiles and the turtles and the snakes. These are cold-blooded creatures, taking their warmth from the world around them, basking in the sun to warm their bodies, growing sluggish in the cool. They grow slowly as a rule, adding size gradually across many years, their cold-blooded bodies sipping energy at an economical pace. A crocodile may take many years to reach its full size, growing slowly and steadily across the decades, and some of them live to remarkable ages, plodding gently through the years at their slow cold-blooded pace. The reptile way of life is slow, economical, patient, governed always by the warmth of the surrounding world. The dinosaurs, as we have learned, were not like this. Their bones tell a different story, a story of fast growth, of bodies that grew quickly like the warm-blooded creatures of today rather than slowly like the cold-blooded reptiles. A young dinosaur did not grow at the slow patient pace of a young crocodile. It shot upward in size, packing on weight at a tremendous rate, growing more like a young bird or a young mammal than like a young lizard. This fast growth is one of the great clues that tells us the dinosaurs were something more than simple cold-blooded reptiles, that they ran warmer and faster, that they had found a different way of living than the reptiles we know. And this difference shaped their lives in profound ways. Because they grew fast, the dinosaurs could reach enormous sizes within a reasonable span of years. A cold-blooded creature growing at the slow reptile pace would take an impossibly long time to reach the size of a great sauropod, far longer than any life could last. But a dinosaur growing at its warm fast pace could reach those enormous sizes within a few decades, fast enough to fit within the span of a long life. The fast growth of the dinosaurs was what allowed them to become giants, what made possible the great sizes that no cold-blooded creature could ever have reached. Their warm fast way of living was the engine of their gigantism, the secret of their great scale. Yet the dinosaurs also lived long, the largest of them longer than most warm-blooded creatures of similar pace would. And here we return to the in-between nature we spoke of earlier, the way the dinosaurs seem to have combined the fast growth of the warm-blooded with something of the longevity of the slow and steady. They were not simply warm-blooded like a bird or a mammal, burning hot and fast and aging quickly. Nor were they simply cold-blooded like a reptile, growing slow and living economically. They were something in between, something balanced, something that took the fast growth of one and the long endurance of the other, and combined them into a way of living all their own. This unique way of living may be part of what made the dinosaurs so extraordinarily successful, so enduring, so dominant for so very long. They had found, perhaps, a kind of sweet spot, a balance between the warm and the cold, the fast and the slow, that allowed them both to grow large quickly and to endure long. They could become giants, and the giants could live for decades. They could grow fast in youth and yet last long in maturity. It was a winning combination, a way of living that served them well across their immense reign, that helped them dominate the land for 165 million years. And the legacy of this way of living survives in part in the birds. For the birds, the living dinosaurs, are warm-blooded, fully and truly warm-blooded, burning hot and fast. The dinosaur lineage, across its long history, moved gradually toward the warm-blooded way, and in the birds it reached the fully warm-blooded state. The small fast-living songbirds, with their racing hearts and their brief bright lives, show us the warm-blooded extreme that the dinosaur lineage eventually reached. And yet even among the birds, the large ones live long, the great parrots and albatrosses reaching their many decades, carrying forward something of the longevity that the dinosaurs had always possessed. There is something wonderful in contemplating this, the way the dinosaurs charted their own unique path between the great strategies of animal life, neither fully one thing nor the other, but something balanced and successful in all their own. They were not the slow cold reptiles of the old imagination, basking sluggishly in the ancient sun. Nor were they simply scaled-up birds, burning hot and fast. They were dinosaurs, a thing unto themselves, with their own way of growing and living and aging, their own balance of the warm and the cold, their own unique rhythm that carried them to greatness and endurance across an age beyond all reckoning. Let us rest now with the dinosaurs in their uniqueness, neither the slow cold reptiles nor the fast hot birds, but something balanced and beautiful in between, charting their own path between the great strategies of life. There is peace in this, in the contemplation of creatures so perfectly suited to their world, so successfully balanced between the extremes, so wonderfully and uniquely themselves. Let that peace settle over you, the peace of creatures who had found their own perfect balance, their own way of growing and living and enduring, and let it carry you gently toward your rest. We have spoken of the rings in the bones and of the scientists who read them, but let us now spend a gentle while honoring more fully the patient work that has given us all the knowledge we have explored tonight. For everything we know about how long the dinosaurs lived, every year we have counted, every life we have traced, comes to us through the patient labor of the people who study these ancient remains. And there is something deeply restful in contemplating their slow careful work, the quiet patient devotion that has slowly, across many years, pieced together the story of the dinosaur lives. Imagine the long journey of a single fossil, from the deep past to the laboratory. It begins when an ancient creature dies and its bones are buried, slowly, in the soft sediment of a riverbed or a floodplain or a desert. Across millions upon millions of years, the bones turn slowly to stone, the minerals seeping in, the bone transforming into fossil while preserving, faithfully, the structure that holds the record of the years. And there the fossil rests, deep in the rock, for 66 million years and more, while the world transforms above it, while the continents drift and the mountains rise and the dinosaurs give way to the mammals and the mammals give rise at last to us. And then one day the fossil comes to light. Perhaps a fossil hunter walking across a remote and barren landscape spots a fragment of ancient bone weathering out of the rock. Perhaps a great storm or a slow erosion exposes a buried skeleton after its long sleep. Perhaps a careful excavation, planned and patient, uncovers the remains piece by piece. However it comes to light, the fossil is then carefully recovered, often with enormous labor, the surrounding rock chipped away grain by grain, the precious bones wrapped and protected and carried away to the laboratory, the first time they have moved in 66 million years. In the laboratory the patient work continues. The bones are cleaned, slowly and carefully, the last of the rock removed with fine tools and great patience. They are studied, measured, compared, photographed. And then, for the bones whose years we wish to read, comes the delicate work of taking a thin section. A sliver is cut from the bone, a precious and irreversible act, for the fossil is irreplaceable. The sliver is mounted and ground down, thinner and thinner, polished with the greatest care, until at last it is so thin that light passes through it, so thin that the inner structure of the bone, the rings and the layers and the channels, reveals itself beneath the microscope. And then the counting begins. The patient scholar bends over the microscope in the quiet of the laboratory, and begins to count the rings, one by one, reading the years of a life lived so long ago that the very continents have moved since then. It is slow, careful, meticulous work, requiring great skill and great patience and great devotion. The rings must be identified, distinguished from one another, counted accurately, interpreted carefully. It is the work of hours, of days, bent over the microscope in the quiet light, slowly reading the diary of an ancient life. And from this patient work, this slow careful labor, comes all the knowledge we have explored tonight. Every number, every span, every life we have traced, comes from someone bending over a microscope and counting, someone slicing a precious fossil and reading its rings, someone devoting their patient attention to the slow careful work of understanding how the dinosaurs lived. The knowledge did not come easily or quickly. It came through years of patient labor, fossil by fossil, ring by ring, slowly accumulating into the rich understanding we now possess. There is a deep beauty in this devotion, this patient careful work, this slow tending of the memory of ancient lives. The scholars who do this work are, in a sense, the keepers of the dinosaur years, the ones who count the seasons that would otherwise be lost, the ones who read the diaries that would otherwise stay closed. Through their patient labor, the years of the dinosaurs are not lost but remembered, not forgotten but counted, not abandoned but tended with care. It is a kind of faithfulness across the gulf of time, a quiet devotion to lives long vanished, a patient honoring of the dead. And the work continues still year after year in laboratories and museums around the world. Even now, even tonight, somewhere a scholar may be bent over a microscope, counting the rings of an ancient bone, reading the years of a creature long turned to stone. The patient work goes on, the slow careful labor of understanding, adding life by life and year by year to our knowledge of the deep past. The dinosaurs are gone, but their years are being counted still, faithfully, patiently, by the devoted keepers of their memory. Let us rest now with the patient work of the bone readers, the slow careful labor that has given us all we know, the quiet devotion that counts the years and reads the diaries and tends the memory of the ancient dead. There is such peace in patience, such beauty in devotion, such restfulness in the slow careful work of understanding. Let that peace settle over you, the peace of patient labor and quiet devotion, and let it carry you gently as the scholar bends over the microscope in the quiet light, counting the rings, reading the years, tending the long memory of the dinosaurs across the great gulf of time. We have traced the lives of the dinosaurs across their immense reign, from the humble beginning to the great flourishing. Let us now turn, gently and without sorrow, to the ending, to the last generations of the great dinosaurs and the quiet world that came after. For an ending is part of every story, even the longest, and there is a particular peace in contemplating endings softly, from the great calm distance of deep time. The last generations of the great dinosaurs lived in a world at the very height of the dynasty's glory, richer and more varied than ever before. The great horned herds moved across the plains. The mighty tyrant king reigned over the late ancient world. The duck-billed multitudes filled the landscape with their gentle abundance. The armored dinosaurs plodded through the forests, the small swift hunters darted through the undergrowth, and high above, the great winged creatures soared on their leathery wings. It was a world in full flourishing, the dinosaur dynasty at its mature and magnificent peak, the culmination of 165 million years of life. These last dinosaurs lived their lives just as their ancestors had, knowing nothing of the ending that was coming. They hatched from their eggs, grew through their youth, reached their maturity, raised their young, lived out their allotted spans, the brief for the small and the long for the great. The great wheel of the generations turned as it always had, life renewing itself season after season, the river flowing on as it had flowed for 165 million years. There was no sense of an ending, no shadow of what was to come. There were only the ordinary lives of ordinary creatures, living their years in the rich late world of the dinosaur dynasty at its peak. And then, in a single terrible moment, the world changed. A great rock from space, an asteroid larger than a mountain, struck the Earth with a force beyond all imagining. The impact transformed the world in a geological instant, throwing vast quantities of debris into the sky, darkening the sun, disrupting the climate, collapsing the great food chains upon which the dinosaurs depended. The rich, abundant world that had nourished the dinosaurs for so long was suddenly thrown into chaos, and the great creatures so perfectly suited to the world that had been, could not survive the world that suddenly was. But let us not dwell on the catastrophe itself, not in fear or sorrow. Let us instead consider it with the great calm distance that deep time allows. The ending of the dinosaurs, terrible as it was a single moment in the vast sweep of the Earth's long history, one turning among many, one ending that made way as endings always do for new beginnings. The dinosaurs had ruled for an age beyond all reckoning, and even the mightiest dynasty must, in time, give way. Their ending was not a failure but simply the close of an immense chapter, the setting of a sun that had shone for 165 million years. And from the quiet after, from the transformed world that the dinosaurs left behind, new life slowly emerged. The small mammals who had lived in the shadows of the dinosaurs for all those ages, small and humble and brief-lived, suddenly found a world full of opportunity, a world emptied of the great rulers, a world open to new kinds of life. And so the mammals rose slowly across the long ages that followed, growing larger and more varied, eventually giving rise to all the great mammals of the modern world, and at last, after many more ages, to us. The ending of the dinosaurs was, in time, the beginning of the age of mammals, the beginning of the long road that would lead, eventually, to the very minds that now contemplate the dinosaurs across the gulf of time. And the dinosaurs themselves did not vanish entirely, as we have learned. The birds, the one surviving branch of the great family, flew on into the quiet after, carrying the ancient lineage forward into the new world. While the great dinosaurs passed from the earth, the feathered ones survived, and across the long ages that followed they spread and diversified into all the birds of the modern world, the songbirds and the seabirds and the birds of prey, the small swift ones and the great long-lived ones, carrying forward into our own age the rhythms of life that the dinosaurs had always known. The dynasty did not truly end. It survived, transformed in the birds, and it sings on in our trees and soars on in our skies even now. There is a deep peace in this, the peace of endings that make way for beginnings, the peace of the great cycle of life turning on across the ages, dynasty giving way to dynasty, age giving way to age, the river of life flowing on unbroken through every ending and every beginning. The dinosaurs had their immense and glorious reign, and then they gave way as all things give way in time, and from their ending came the age of mammals and the rise of the birds and, eventually, the very moment in which we now rest, contemplating their long-ago lives. Nothing was truly lost. Everything flowed on, transformed into what came next. Let us rest now in the quiet after, in the great calm that follows even the mightiest ending. The dinosaurs had their 165 million years, their immense and glorious reign, and then they gave way gently to what came next, the age of mammals, the rise of the birds, the long road that led at last to us. There is no sorrow in this, only the great calm of deep time, the gentle turning of the ages, the river flowing on. Let that great calm settle over you, the peace of the quiet after, the peace of endings that make way for beginnings, and let it carry you softly toward your own deep rest. We have wandered tonight through spans of time so vast that the mind can scarcely hold them, the decades of a single dinosaur life, the 165 million years of the dynasty, the 66 million years since the great ending. Let us now sit quietly with this vastness, this deep time, and find in it not bewilderment but comfort, for there is a profound peace to be found in contemplating the great age of the world and our own small place within it. We live, most of us, in the small spans of human time, the days and the weeks and the years, the hurried rhythms of our brief busy lives. We worry about the hours, we count the days, we fret over the passing of time as though it were always slipping away too fast. And in the smallness of our human spans, the worries can grow large, pressing close, filling the whole of our attention. But when we lift our gaze to deep time, to the great age of the world, to the vast spans across which the dinosaurs lived and the continents drifted and the mountains rose and fell, something gentle happens. The worries grow small. The hurry softens. The vast calm of deep time settles over us like a great quiet sky, and we remember how small and brief our troubles truly are against the immensity of the ages. Consider, slowly, the great spans we have contemplated tonight. A single dinosaur might live for 70 years, the better part of a human life. The dinosaur dynasty endured for 165 million years, more than 30,000 times the length of all recorded human history. And since the great ending, 66 million more years have passed, an unimaginable span across which the whole age of the mammals unfolded and the birds spread across the world and the slow patient work of life eventually gave rise to us. These spans are so vast that our entire human story, every empire and city and life that has ever been, fits within the merest sliver at the very end, a thin bright line at the edge of an immense and ancient canvas. There is humility in this, but it is a gentle humility, a comforting one. We are small, our lives are brief, our troubles are tiny against the vastness of deep time. But this is not a cause for despair. It is a cause for peace. For if our troubles are small against the ages, then they need not press so heavily upon us. If our lives are brief against the immensity of time, then we are free simply to live them, to enjoy our brief bright span as the small dinosaurs enjoyed theirs, complete and full in its own time, asking nothing more than to be the life it is. The vastness of deep time does not diminish us. It frees us, it soothes us, it sets our small worries gently in their proper place against the great calm sweep of the ages. And there is wonder in it too, the deepest kind of wonder. To live in a world so ancient, so vast, so full of long-vanished ages and forgotten lives, is an extraordinary thing. The ground beneath our feet holds the bones of creatures that lived 100 million years ago. The birds outside our windows carry the ancient lineage of the dinosaurs. The very atoms of our bodies were forged in ancient stars and have passed through countless forms across the unimaginable ages. We are part of something immense, something ancient, something that stretches back across billions of years and forward into an unknowable future. To contemplate this is to feel the great calm wonder of belonging to the vast and ancient story of life on Earth. When you lie awake at night, troubled by the small worries of the day, you might remember the dinosaurs and the deep time across which they lived. You might remember the great sauropod living its gentle century, the dynasty enduring across 165 million years, the vast calm sweep of the ages rolling on and on beneath the patient stars. And in remembering, you might feel your small worries grow gently smaller, your hurried thoughts grow gently slower, the great calm of deep time settling over you like a soft and welcome dark. The ages are vast. The world is ancient. Your troubles are small and brief. And there is peace, deep peace in remembering this. Let us rest now in the great comfort of deep time, in the vast calm sweep of the ages, in the gentle humility and the deep wonder of belonging to the ancient story of life on Earth. The dinosaurs lived their long-ago lives across spans we can scarcely imagine, and they are at rest now, all of them, their years counted, their stories told, their long reign ended and yet flowing on in the birds. And we, brief and small against the ages, may rest too, soothed by the vastness, comforted by the deep time, set gently in our proper place against the great calm sweep of the eons. Let the vastness hold you. Let the deep time soothe you. Let the great calm of the ages carry you softly and completely toward your sleep. The nests and the eggs. We began our long evening with a single egg in a warm nest, and now let us return there gently to spend a while among the nests and the eggs of the dinosaurs, for the beginning of life holds its own quiet wonders, and there is great peace in contemplating the gentle origins of these ancient creatures. The egg, after all, is where every dinosaur lifespan began, the starting point of every span we have counted tonight. The dinosaurs were great layers of eggs, and across their long reign they laid countless billions of them, in nests of every kind, across landscapes of every sort. Some dinosaurs laid their eggs in simple scrapes in the earth, shallow depressions lined perhaps with leaves and plant matter, tucked into the warm soil at the edge of a forest or along the bank of a river. Others built more elaborate nests, mounds of vegetation whose slow decay generated warmth, like a gentle natural incubator keeping the eggs warm as they developed. Still others may have buried their eggs in warm sand or soil, letting the heat of the earth or the sun do the patient work of incubation. The eggs themselves came in many shapes and sizes, though all of them, even the eggs of the greatest giants, were surprisingly modest in size, limited by the need for the shell to let air pass through to the growing creature within. Some eggs were round, some elongated, some smooth and some pebbled in texture. They were laid in clutches, sometimes just a few, sometimes many, sometimes arranged in careful circles or spirals within the nest, suggesting that the mother turned and arranged them with some care as she laid them. Within each egg, in the warm dark, a tiny dinosaur slowly took shape, growing across the weeks or months of incubation toward the moment when it would break free into the world. We have learned that some dinosaurs cared for their nests with great attention, guarding the eggs, perhaps shielding them from the sun or the rain, defending them from the egg-eating creatures who would gladly make a meal of them. The dinosaur whose name means good mother lizard was so named because the evidence suggested it tended its nest and its young with care, bringing food to the hatchlings, watching over them until they were strong enough to fend for themselves. Imagine such tenderness in these ancient creatures, the great parent watching over the nest, guarding the eggs, tending the young, the same gentle care that we see in the birds today, the living dinosaurs who tend their nests with such devotion. Other dinosaurs, as we have learned, gave no such care, laying their eggs and moving on, trusting in numbers, trusting that from a great many eggs, some hatchlings would survive even without protection. For these, the nest was simply a place to leave the eggs, and the hatchlings, when they emerged, faced the world entirely alone from their very first breath. Two different strategies, two different ways of beginning a life, the tended nest and the abandoned one, both of them played out across the dinosaur world, both of them carrying their hatchlings by very different paths, toward the dangerous beginning of life. There is a particular wonder in contemplating the great nesting grounds, the places where many dinosaurs gathered together to lay their eggs, returning perhaps to the same sites year after year, generation after generation. Some of these ancient nesting grounds have been found, preserved in the rock, with the nests of many dinosaurs gathered closely together, suggesting great colonies where the gentle creatures came together to bring forth their young. Imagine such a place, a wide nesting ground spread across the ancient landscape, dotted with the nests of many dinosaurs, the great parents moving among the nests, tending their eggs, the air filled with the soft sounds of the colony, the whole place devoted to the patient work of beginning new life. And then the moment of hatching, the beginning of every lifespan we have counted. The tiny creature, having grown across its weeks or months in the warm dark of the egg, begins at last to stir, to scratch and chip at the inner wall of the shell, to work its way out into the light. Slowly, with great effort, the first labor of its life, the small dinosaur breaks free, blinking in the light it has never seen, taking its first breath of the ancient air, beginning the journey through the years that we have traced all night. From this small beginning, this tiny creature emerging from its egg, would come, if it survived, all the growth and all the years of a dinosaur life, the brief span of the small or the long span of the great, all of it beginning here, in the warm nest, in the breaking shell, in the first uncertain breath of a brand new life. Let us rest now among the nests and the eggs, in the gentle beginning of the dinosaur lives, the warm nests in the ancient soil, the eggs developing in the patient dark, the tender care of the good parents, the great nesting colonies spread across the landscape, the small creatures breaking free into the light to begin their journey through the years. There is such peace in beginnings, such gentleness in the origins of life, such quiet wonder in the warm nest and the breaking shell. Let that peace settle over you, the peace of gentle beginnings, the warm quiet of the ancient nest, and let it carry you softly toward your rest, where you too may begin the gentle journey into sleep. Here is a gentle subtlety that deepens our understanding of how the dinosaurs lived, one that rewards slow contemplation as the mind grows soft and slow. Within a single kind of dinosaur, the individuals were not all the same size at the same age. Just as among people some grow taller and some shorter, some faster and some slower, so too among the dinosaurs there was variation, individuals growing at different rates, reaching different sizes, living different spans even within the same kind. And this variation tells us something tender about the individuality of these ancient creatures. When scientists study many individuals of the same kind of dinosaur, slicing their bones and counting their rings, they find that the animals did not all follow exactly the same schedule. Some individuals grew faster, reaching a given size at a younger age. Others grew more slowly, taking longer to reach the same size. Some reached a larger final size, others a smaller one. The growth of a dinosaur was not a rigid mechanical process, the same for every individual, but a living variable thing, shaped by the particular circumstances of each animal's life, the food it found, the seasons it lived through, the fortunes and misfortunes of its individual existence. Think of what shapes the growth of a living creature. A young animal that finds abundant food grows faster and larger than one that struggles to find enough to eat. A creature that lives through good seasons, with plenty of rain and lush vegetation, grows better than one that endures hard seasons of drought and scarcity. An animal that escapes injury and illness grows steadily, while one that suffers a serious wound or a bout of sickness may slow its growth as its body diverts resources toward healing. And so each dinosaur's growth was shaped by its own individual life, its own fortunes, its own particular journey through the years, making each one a little different from the others of its kind. This means that the bones record not just the general pattern of how a kind of dinosaur grew, but the particular individual story of each animal. One sauropod's bones might show steady rapid growth through good years, while another's might show a difficult patch, a slowing of growth during a hard season before recovering and growing on. One individual might have grown to an unusually large size, a great giant even among giants, while another remained somewhat smaller, never quite reaching the heights of its larger kin. Each bone tells an individual story, a particular biography, the unique journey of one creature through its own particular years. There is something deeply moving in this individuality, this variation among creatures that lived so long ago. We tend to think of the dinosaurs in great categories, the sauropods, the predators, the horned ones, as though all the members of each kind were identical, interchangeable, the same. But they were not. Each one was an individual, with its own particular size and its own particular growth and its own particular span of years, shaped by its own particular fortunes. The great sauropod that lived 70 years was not interchangeable with another that lived 50. Each was its own creature, its own life, its own unique journey from the egg to the end. And this individuality extends to the matter of lifespan itself. Within a single kind, some individuals lived longer than others, just as among people some live to great ages while others are claimed sooner. Some dinosaurs were lucky, escaping the dangers, finding the food, weathering the seasons and living on into great age. Others were less fortunate, claimed by predators or illness or hard times before they could reach the full span their kind was capable of. The lifespan of a kind of dinosaur was not a single fixed number but a range, a spread of possibilities, with most individuals falling somewhere in the middle and a fortunate few reaching the great ages at the far end of the range. This is, of course, exactly how it is among the living creatures of our own world, including ourselves. We speak of a human lifespan, but no two humans live exactly the same span. Some are claimed young, some live to great old age, and most fall somewhere in between, each life shaped by its own particular fortunes and circumstances. The dinosaurs were no different. Each one lived its own individual span, shaped by its own individual life, a unique journey through the years that was never quite the same as any other. And in recognizing this individuality, we come to see the dinosaurs not as categories or types but as individual living creatures, each one precious, each one unique, each one living out its own particular life in its own particular time. Let us rest now with the individuality of the dinosaurs, the variation among them, the unique journey of each creature through its own particular years. Each one was its own life, its own story, its own journey from the egg to the end, shaped by its own fortunes, growing at its own pace, living its own span. There is tenderness in this, in seeing the ancient creatures as individuals rather than types, each one precious and unique and complete. Let that tenderness settle over you, the gentle recognition of individual lives lived long ago, and let it carry you softly toward your rest. You who are also an individual, also unique, also living your own particular precious journey through your own particular years. Let us follow the dinosaurs now as they moved across their world, for many of them did not stay in one place across their long lives but traveled, sometimes great distances, following the seasons and the food across the wide ancient landscapes. And there is a wonderful peace in imagining these slow great journeys, the herds moving across the land beneath the changing skies, season after season, year after year, across the long span of their lives. Think of the great herds we have spoken of, the gatherings of long-necked giants, the multitudes of duck-billed dinosaurs, the herds of horned ones moving across the plains. Many of these herds did not remain in a single place but moved with the turning of the seasons, traveling toward the best feeding grounds, following the rains, seeking the lush vegetation that the changing seasons brought to different parts of the landscape. As the wet season came to one region, bringing forth abundant growth, the herds would move toward it, feeding on the new abundance. And as that region dried and another grew lush, the herds would move on again, following the green, following the food, following the patient rhythm of the seasons across the wide land. These journeys may have carried the herds across great distances, hundreds of miles perhaps, across the long span of a year, moving slowly and steadily across the ancient landscapes. Imagine the great herds on the move, the long-necked giants striding slowly across the plains, the ground trembling gently with their ponderous steps, the young sheltered in the center of the herd, the great adults forming a living wall around them. Imagine the slow patient progress across the land, day after day, the herd moving toward the distant feeding grounds, the landscape unfolding slowly around them, the rivers to cross and the hills to skirt and the forest to pass through. For a creature that lived many decades, these seasonal journeys would have been repeated year after year, the same great migrations following the same ancient routes, the herd moving back and forth across the landscape with the turning of the seasons. A great sauropod living 70 years might have made such a journey 70 times, traveling the same long routes again and again across the decades, until the paths were as familiar to it as the rooms of your own home are to you. The journeys became part of the rhythm of its life, the great seasonal movements as regular and familiar as the rising and setting of the sun. And these journeys connected the dinosaurs to the wide sweep of their world in a way that a settled life never could. A migrating dinosaur knew not just one place but many, the wet season feeding grounds and the dry season refuges, the river crossings and the mountain passes, the whole great circuit of its seasonal travels. Across its long life, it came to know a vast stretch of the ancient world, traveling it again and again, season after season, year after year, until the great landscape was woven into the very rhythm of its life. There is a deep peace in imagining these slow great journeys, the herds moving patiently across the ancient land, following the seasons and the food, traveling the same familiar routes year after year across the long decades of their lives. There is no hurry in such a journey, no rush, only the slow patient progress across the landscape, the steady movement with the turning of the seasons, the gentle rhythm of travel and rest and travel again. The herds moved as the seasons moved, as slowly and as patiently as the changing of the year itself, and there is great calm in contemplating such unhurried movement across the wide ancient world. Imagine yourself among them, slowly as you rest. Imagine moving with the great herd across the ancient plain, the slow steady progress, the ground passing gently beneath you, the landscape unfolding around you, the warm sky above. There is nowhere you need to be by any particular time. There is only the slow, patient journey, the steady movement with the herd, the gentle rhythm of travel across the wide land. The herd moves as slowly as drifting clouds, as patiently as the turning seasons, and you move with it, unhurried, at peace, carried along by the great slow rhythm of the journey across the ancient world. Let that peace settle over you now, the peace of the slow great journeys, the herds moving patiently across the land, following the seasons across the long decades of their lives. Let the slow steady rhythm of the journey carry you, the unhurried progress across the wide ancient world, the gentle movement with the great herd beneath the warm and patient sky. There is no hurry. There never was. There is only the slow journey, the patient movement, the gentle rhythm of travel and rest, carrying you softly, like the great herd across the ancient plain, toward your own deep rest. The food that an animal eats shapes its whole way of life, and the dinosaurs were no exception. The length of their lives, the size they reached, the rhythm of their days, all were shaped in part by what they ate and how they found it. So let us spend a gentle while now contemplating the food of the dinosaurs, the great feeding that filled so much of their long lives, for there is a quiet peace in imagining the abundance of the ancient world and the great creatures feeding patiently within it. The great plant-eating dinosaurs, the giants and the horned ones and the duck-billed multitudes, spent the greater part of their lives doing one thing above all others. They ate. A great body requires a great deal of fuel, and the largest dinosaurs needed truly enormous quantities of plant food to sustain their vast frames. And so they fed, almost constantly, cropping vegetation from the trees and the ground, swallowing it down, processing it slowly through their great digestive systems. The feeding was the central business of their lives, the patient daily work of gathering enough fuel to sustain their enormous bodies, hour after hour, day after day, across all the long years of their lives. The great long-necked giants reached food that no other creature could touch, sweeping their long necks across great arcs of forest, cropping the foliage from the tops of the tall trees, reaching the abundant high vegetation that lay beyond the reach of every other animal. This was the secret of their feeding, the long neck that opened up a whole realm of food, the high canopy that they alone could reach. While other creatures competed for the low vegetation, the giants fed serenely on the heights, their long necks giving them access to an abundance that was theirs almost alone. And this abundant food, reached so efficiently by the long neck, helped sustain their enormous size and their long lives. The duck-billed dinosaurs and the horned ones fed lower down, cropping the vegetation of the ground and the low growth, processing it with their remarkable teeth and jaws. The duck-bills in particular had marvelous batteries of teeth, hundreds of them packed together into great grinding surfaces, perfect for processing tough plant food, grinding it down so that their bodies could extract the nourishment within. This efficient processing of plant food helped fuel their swift growth and their abundant successful lives, the great grinding teeth working away at the vegetation, breaking it down, extracting the fuel that powered their gentle multitudes. And the great predators, of course, ate flesh, hunting the plant eaters or scavenging the bodies of the dead, fueling their powerful bodies with the rich nourishment of meat. The hunting life shaped their years profoundly, as we have seen, filling their lives with danger and risk, marking their bones with the injuries of the hunt. But it also fueled their great size and their power, the rich meat sustaining their mighty frames, powering the furious growth spurts of their youth, fueling the great muscles that made them the terrors of the ancient world. What they ate shaped what they were, the hunters made by the hunt, their whole way of life built around the pursuit and capture of their prey. There is a great peace in imagining the abundance of the ancient world, the lush vegetation that fed the giants, the rich plenty that sustained the great herds. The world of the dinosaurs was, for much of their reign, a green and abundant place, thick with vegetation, rich with food, generous enough to sustain the largest land animals that have ever lived. The giants fed serenely on the heights, the herds grazed across the abundant plains, the whole great pageant of dinosaur life sustained by the rich green abundance of the ancient world. Imagine that abundance, that generosity, that lush green plenty stretching across the ancient landscapes, feeding the great creatures across all their long years. And imagine the great patience of the feeding, the long unhurried hours spent cropping vegetation, processing food, gathering the fuel for the great body. There was no hurry in it, no rush. The giant fed slowly, patiently, hour after hour, sweeping its long neck across the green abundance, taking in the food it needed at its own unhurried pace. The feeding was a slow and patient and peaceful thing, the great creature standing serenely among the abundance, taking in the green plenty, sustained by the generous world. There is deep calm in imagining such feeding, such patient peaceful gathering of food across the long quiet hours. Let us rest now with the food of the dinosaurs, the great feeding that filled their long lives, the giants cropping the high canopy, the herds grazing the abundant plains, the rich green plenty of the ancient world sustaining the great creatures across all their years. Let the abundance settle over you, the generous green world, the patient peaceful feeding, the slow unhurried gathering of food across the long quiet hours. There is peace in abundance, calm in plenty, deep rest in the patient feeding of the great creatures in the generous ancient world. Let that peace carry you gently toward your own deep rest. We have spent our long evening among the lives of the dinosaurs, and perhaps now, as we begin to draw toward the close, it is worth pausing to compare their lives gently to our own, to set the dinosaur lifespans beside the human lifespan and see what quiet wisdom emerges from the comparison. For in measuring their years against ours, we may find a gentle perspective on our own lives, a soft and soothing wisdom to carry with us toward sleep. A human being in the modern world may hope to live perhaps 70, 80, even 90 years or more, a long full span by the measure of most creatures. And how does this compare to the dinosaurs? Remarkably, it places us right alongside the great giants, the long-lived sauropods who reached ages of 60, 70, perhaps approaching 100 years. We live, in other words, at roughly the pace of the great giants of the dinosaur world, the slow long-lived ones, the great slow stars rather than the brief bright candles. Our lives unfold at the pace of the largest and longest-lived of the dinosaurs, the patient giants who grew slowly and endured across the decades. This is a curious and rather wonderful thing to contemplate. We are not large by the standards of the dinosaurs. A human being is far smaller than a great sauropod, smaller even than many of the dinosaurs we have met tonight. And yet we live as long as the greatest giants, far longer than our size alone would suggest. This is because we are warm-blooded creatures who have, across our own evolution, developed ways of living long, of caring for one another, of surviving the dangers that would claim other creatures, and so we have extended our lives beyond what our size alone would grant. We live long for our size, longer than most creatures our size could hope to, reaching the great ages of the dinosaur giants despite our far more modest dimensions. And consider how we spend our long years compared to the dinosaurs. A dinosaur spent its years feeding, growing, moving with the herd, raising its young, surviving in its wild and dangerous world. Its life was given over almost entirely to the great basic business of staying alive, of finding food and avoiding danger and passing on its life to the next generation. Our lives, by contrast, hold so much more than this, so much that no dinosaur could ever have known. We fill our long years with thought and art and love and discovery, with the building of cities and the asking of questions, with the contemplation of the very dinosaurs whose lives we have traced tonight. We use our long span, the same span as the great giants, for things that no giant could ever have imagined. There is a gentle wisdom here, I think, for our own lives. The dinosaurs lived their years fully, completely, doing exactly what their lives were for, asking nothing more than to be the creatures they were. The small swift ones lived their brief bright spans complete and full. The great giants lived their long slow centuries complete and full. None of them wasted their years in worry about the time, in fretting over the passing of the seasons. They simply lived, fully and completely, the lives they were given for as long as those lives lasted. And in this there is a quiet lesson for us, who are so prone to worry about our time, to fret over the passing years, to fear the brevity of our span. The dinosaurs did not fear their time. They simply lived it, fully, completely, for as long as it lasted. And so might we. For we have, most of us, the same long span as the great giants, 60 or 70 or 80 years beneath the sun. It is a great gift, a long full span, time enough for so very much. And rather than fearing its passing, rather than fretting over the years slipping by, we might learn from the dinosaurs to simply live our span fully, completely, as the creatures we are, asking nothing more than to be the lives we are given. The great giant did not waste its years in worry. It lived them fully, slowly, completely, across the long decades. And we might do the same, living our own long span fully and completely, as the great giants lived theirs, beneath our own warm sky. Let us rest now with this gentle comparison, our own lives set beside the lives of the dinosaurs, our long span placed alongside the long spans of the great giants. We live as long as the greatest of them, the slow long-lived ones, and we fill our years with so much that no dinosaur could ever know. Let us learn from them the gentle wisdom of living fully, completely, without fear of the passing years, simply being the lives we are given for as long as those lives last. Let that wisdom settle over you, the gentle lesson of the dinosaurs, and let it carry you softly toward your rest, you who have your own long full span beneath your own warm sky, time enough for so very much, a great gift to be lived fully and completely and without fear. There is one more gentle truth about the dinosaurs that deserves our slow attention before we begin to draw together all that we have learned. It is the wisdom hidden in the way they grew, and especially in the way the greatest of them grew slowly across the long years. For the dinosaurs teach us something quiet and lovely about the value of slow growth, of patient becoming, of taking the long unhurried path toward greatness. And this is a wonderfully soothing thing to contemplate as the mind grows soft and ready for sleep. Think again of the great sauropod, the long-necked giant, growing slowly across its first 2 decades toward its enormous size. There was no shortcut to becoming a giant. The body had to be built slowly, patiently, year by year, bone by bone, the great frame assembled across the long seasons of growth. The giant could not become a giant overnight, could not rush its way to greatness, could not skip the patient years of slow, steady growing. It had to take the long path, the slow path, the patient path, building itself gradually across the decades until at last it reached the great size that awaited it. And this slow, patient growth was not a weakness but a strength, not a limitation but the very secret of the giant's success. By growing slowly and steadily, building itself carefully across the long years, the giant constructed a body that could endure for decades, that could carry it through a long, full life. The slow growth built a lasting greatness, a greatness that endured, a body made not in haste but with patience and therefore made to last. The giants that grew most slowly and steadily were often the ones that grew largest and lived longest, their patient growth the foundation of their great and lasting size. There is a gentle wisdom in this, a quiet lesson about the value of patience, about the worth of slow steady growth, about the strength that comes from taking the long unhurried path. We live, so often, in a hurry, wishing to grow quickly, to arrive quickly, to reach our goals without the patient labor of slow steady becoming. But the dinosaurs teach us another way, the way of patient growth, of slow steady building, of taking the long path toward a greatness that endures. The giant did not rush. It grew slowly, patiently, year by year, and in its slow patient growth it built a greatness that lasted for decades. And in this there is a quiet lesson for us, who are so often in a hurry, about the deep value of patience, of slow growth, of the long unhurried path. Consider too how the slow growth of the giants connected them to the long rhythms of their world. A creature that grows slowly across decades lives in tune with the long slow rhythms of the seasons and the years, the patient turning of the world. It is not a creature of the moment, of the quick and the urgent, but a creature of the long view, the slow patient unfolding, the gentle turning of the years. The giant lived at the pace of the seasons, the pace of the drifting continents, the pace of the slow turning world, growing as slowly and as patiently as the world itself changed around it. And there is deep peace in living at such a pace, in tune with the long slow rhythms of the world, unhurried, patient, gentle as the turning of the years. Imagine growing as the great giant grew, slowly, patiently, across the long decades, in tune with the turning seasons, building yourself gradually toward a greatness that would endure. Imagine the patience of it, the gentleness, the slow steady unfolding across the years. There is no hurry in such growth, no rush, no urgency. There is only the slow patient building, the gentle becoming, the steady unfolding toward greatness across the long unhurried years. And in imagining such growth, such patience, such gentle unhurried becoming, the mind itself grows slow and patient and calm, settling into the long slow rhythm of the patient giant, the gentle pace of slow steady growth. Let us rest now with the quiet wisdom of slow growth, the patient becoming of the great giants, the slow steady building of a greatness that endures. There is such peace in patience, such strength in slow steady growth, such gentle wisdom in taking the long unhurried path. Let that peace settle over you, the calm of the patient giant, the gentle pace of slow steady becoming, the deep rest of living in tune with the long slow rhythms of the turning world. There is no hurry. There never was. There is only the slow patient unfolding, the gentle becoming, the steady growth across the long quiet years, carrying you softly, like the patient giant growing across the decades, toward your own deep rest. Now, as our long evening begins to draw toward its close, let us do something gentle and complete. Let us gather together all the years we have counted tonight, all the lives we have traced, all the spans we have explored, and hold them together one last time, the whole great range of dinosaur lifespans gathered into a single peaceful contemplation. For we have wandered far and wide across the dinosaur world, and it is sweet now to draw all our wanderings together, to hold the whole great picture in one final gentle gaze before we let it settle into sleep. We began with the smallest and swiftest of the dinosaurs, the quick little hunters who lived their brief bright lives, a handful of years, a decade at most, burning fast and bright like candles, complete and full in their swiftness. We held them gently, the small swift ones, and learned that a brief life is no lesser life, that a few years can be a whole and complete existence, perfectly suited to the creature living it. The small ones lived fast and died young, and there was no sorrow in it, only the bright completeness of a life lived at speed. Then we moved to the great predators, the mighty hunters who lived their hard-fast lives, reaching perhaps 30 years, growing through furious spurts and reigning briefly at their full and terrible size. We learned that even the mightiest predators lived shorter lives than the gentle giants, that power and long life do not always travel together, that the great hunters traded length of life for intensity, burning hot and fast and brilliant across their 3 brief decades. Then we met the armored and the horned, the walking fortresses with their plates and clubs and horns and frills, living their patient middle spans, a decade or two, protected by their bodies and their herds, enduring with quiet persistence through the seasons. We learned the comfort of their middle path, neither the briefest nor the longest, the sturdy sensible spans of the well-defended creatures, secure in their armor and their numbers. Then we met the gentle multitudes of the duck-billed dinosaurs, living their respectable spans of a decade or two, growing swiftly, moving in their great herds, tending their young in their crowded colonies, filling the ancient world with their abundant gentle lives. We learned the peace of their belonging, the comfort of their multitudes, the gentle social rhythm of their lives lived together in the great herds. Then we rose into the air and met the dinosaurs that took to the sky, the birds, the living dinosaurs of our own age, carrying forward the whole great range of dinosaur lifespans into the present, the small songbirds with their brief few years and the great parrots and albatrosses with their many decades. We learned that the dinosaurs are not entirely gone, that they sing in our trees and soar in our skies even now, carrying the ancient rhythms forward into our own world. And then, above all, we dwelt with the great giants, the long-necked sauropods, the longest-lived of all the dinosaurs, reaching ages of 60, 70, perhaps approaching a century. We followed one of them, our long-necked one, from her egg through her 70 years to her gentle end, and we learned the deep peace of the great slow life, the patient growth across the decades, the long calm safety of great size, the gentle century of the slow long-lived giant. The giants were the great slow stars of the dinosaur world, burning gently across the better part of 100 years, and in their slowness and their patience there was the deepest peace of all. There they all are, then, gathered together, the whole great range of dinosaur lives. The brief bright candles of the small swift ones. The hard fast decades of the great predators. The patient middle spans of the armored and the horned. The respectable spans of the gentle duck-billed multitudes. The full range carried forward by the birds into our own age. And the long slow centuries of the great giants, the longest lived of all. From a handful of years to nearly 100, the dinosaurs lived their many spans, each kind in its own rhythm, each one suited to the creature living it, all of them together filling the ancient world with a great rich symphony of lives, long and short and everything in between. And above all these individual lives, we held the great span of the dynasty itself, the 165 million years across which the dinosaurs ruled the land, the immense reign that endured through the drifting of continents and the rising of mountains, the vast unfolding pageant of age upon age, kind after kind, the great river of dinosaur life flowing on across spans of time beyond all reckoning. The individual lives were brief against this vastness, even the longest of them, even the gentle century of the great giant. But each one mattered, each one counted, each one was a precious link in the great unbroken chain that stretched across the immense reign of the dynasty. Let us hold them all now, one last time, in a single gentle gaze, the whole great gathering of dinosaur years. The brief and the long, the fast and the slow, the small and the great, all of them together, all of them at rest now, all of their years counted and their stories told. From the swift little hunter living its handful of years to the great giant living its gentle century, from the single life to the vast dynasty, the whole great range of dinosaur time gathered into one final peaceful contemplation. They lived, all of them, fully and completely, each in its own rhythm, each for its own span, and now they are all at rest, their long story told, their years gathered together in our gentle remembering. Let that great gathering settle over you now, the whole peaceful host of dinosaur lives, gathered together at the close of our long evening. Let them carry you, all of them together, the brief and the long, the fast and the slow, into your own deep rest. They are all at peace now, all of them, after all their many years, and you may be at peace too in their good company, in the gentle gathering of all the dinosaur years, drifting softly now toward the deep sweet rest that awaits you. The stars that watch them all. Let us lift our gaze now, in these last quiet stretches of our journey, away from the bones and the years and the great creatures, up toward the stars that watched over all of it, the ancient patient stars that shone down upon the dinosaurs across all their long reign. For the same stars that shine down upon us tonight shone down upon the dinosaurs, more or less, across their 165 million years, and there is a deep and gentle peace in contemplating this great continuity, this thread of starlight stretching unbroken from the age of the dinosaurs to our own quiet night. Imagine a dinosaur, one of the great giants, settling down to rest on a clear night in the deep past. Above it, the dark sky would have been scattered with stars, just as our sky is tonight, the same vast field of distant light spread across the darkness. The constellations would have looked somewhat different, for the stars drift slowly across the immense ages, and the patterns we know today had not yet formed in quite the same shapes. But the stars themselves, the great field of distant suns, the soft glow of the night sky, all of this the dinosaur would have seen, much as we see it now, the same ancient lights shining down across the gulf of time. The great creatures slept beneath those stars night after night, across all their long lives, across all the generations of the dynasty. The small swift hunters and the great slow giants, the armored ones and the horned ones, the gentle duck-billed multitudes, all of them rested beneath the patient stars, night after night, year after year, across the immense reign. The stars watched over their sleeping, as the stars have always watched over the sleeping of every creature that has ever lived upon the earth. The same soft starlight that falls upon you now fell upon the dinosaurs in their rest, a gentle thread of light connecting your quiet night to theirs across the vast gulf of time. And the stars are so very old, older even than the dinosaurs, older than the earth itself. The light that falls upon you from the distant stars tonight set out on its journey long ago, traveling across the vast dark for years and centuries and ages before reaching your eyes. Some of the starlight that touches the earth tonight began its journey in the very age of the dinosaurs, traveling across the immense distances of space for millions of years, only now arriving, only now touching the earth, a message from the deep past written in ancient light. When you gaze up at the stars, you are looking back in time, seeing the light of long ago, the same ancient light that touched the dinosaurs in their distant age. There is a profound peace in this great continuity, this thread of starlight stretching unbroken across the ages. The stars watch the dinosaurs sleep, and the stars watch us sleep, and the stars will watch over all the creatures that come after us, shining down with the same patient light across all the ages of the world. They are the great constant, the patient witnesses, the ancient lights that have watched over all of life across all of time. And there is deep comfort in knowing that the same stars that watched the great giants settle to rest in the deep past are watching over you now, as you settle toward your own rest, the same gentle starlight falling softly upon you as it fell upon them so very long ago. Imagine yourself now beneath those ancient stars, in the gentle dark, settling toward your rest as the great giants settled toward theirs across the long ages. The same stars shine down upon you, the same patient lights, the same soft glow of the night sky that watched over the dinosaurs across all their reign. You are connected to them by this thread of starlight, this gentle continuity, this ancient light that has touched every creature that has ever rested upon the earth. Beneath the same patient stars, you settle toward your sleep as the dinosaurs settled toward theirs, held in the same gentle dark, watched over by the same ancient lights. Let that peace settle over you now, the peace of the patient stars, the ancient lights that watched over the dinosaurs and watch over you now, the gentle thread of starlight stretching unbroken across the vast gulf of time. Let the ancient stars watch over your rest as they watched over the rest of the great giants in the deep past. You are held in the same gentle dark, beneath the same patient lights, connected across the ages to all the creatures that have ever settled to sleep beneath the stars. Let the ancient starlight carry you softly, gently, toward your own deep sweet rest, beneath the same patient stars that watched over the dinosaurs across all their long ago years. As we come now to the final stretches of our long quiet journey, let us gather, very gently, the deepest truth at the heart of all that we have explored tonight. For beneath all the years we have counted and the lives we have traced, beneath all the spans of the small and the great, there lies a single gentle truth, simple and profound, that we may carry with us into sleep. And it is this: every dinosaur, however long or short its life, lived its full span beneath the ancient sun, complete and whole, exactly as it was meant to be. This is the truth that runs beneath everything. The small swift hunter living its handful of years lived a complete life, a whole life, a life perfectly suited to the creature it was. The great giant living its gentle century lived a complete life too, no more complete than the small one, simply longer, simply slower, equally whole, equally suited to the creature it was. There was no lesser life and no greater life among them, only different lives, different spans, different rhythms, each one complete, each one whole, each one exactly the life that creature was meant to live. The brevity of the small one was not a tragedy, and the length of the great one was not a triumph. They were simply different ways of being alive, each one full and complete in its own way. And this gentle truth reaches out to touch our own lives, softly as we rest. For we too live our span, whatever it may be, complete and whole, exactly the lives we are meant to live. We need not measure our lives against others, need not wish them longer or different or other than they are. Like the dinosaurs, we live our own span, in our own rhythm, complete and whole in our own particular way. The small, swift dinosaur did not wish to be a giant. The great giant did not wish to be swift and small. Each was content to be the creature it was, to live the life it had, to fill its own span fully and completely. And in this contentment, this acceptance, this full living of the life one has, there is the deepest peace of all. Consider how the dinosaurs lived without the burden of measuring their time, without the weight of worrying over their years. They simply lived, fully and completely, doing what their lives were for, being the creatures they were for as long as their lives lasted. They did not fret over the passing seasons. They did not fear the shortness or wish for the length of their span. They simply lived in the eternal present of the living creature, fully present in each day, each season, each year, until their life came to its natural close. And there is a gentle wisdom in this for us, who carry so heavily the burden of time, who fret and worry over our passing years. The dinosaurs simply lived. And so might we. For we have each of us our own span beneath the sun, our own allotted years, our own particular life to live. And like the dinosaurs, we might live it fully, completely, present in each day, content to be the creatures we are, free of the burden of measuring and the weight of worrying. We might simply live our span as the dinosaurs lived theirs, fully and completely and without fear, content in the life we have, present in the day we are given, at peace with our own particular rhythm, our own particular span, our own particular precious journey through the years. This is the gentle truth at the heart of it all, the deepest peace of our long journey tonight. Every life, however long or short, is complete and whole, exactly as it is meant to be. The dinosaurs lived their many spans, the brief and the long, complete and whole, content to be the creatures they were. And we may live our own span the same way, fully and completely and without fear, content in the life we have, present in each precious day, at peace with our own particular journey through the years. There is nothing to measure, nothing to fear, nothing to wish other than it is. There is only the life we have, complete and whole, to be lived fully and completely beneath our own warm sun. Let that gentle truth settle over you now, in these last quiet moments of our journey, the deepest peace of all that we have explored tonight. Every life is complete and whole, exactly as it is meant to be. The dinosaurs knew this, in their way, living their spans fully and completely without fear or measuring. And you may know it too, resting now in the gentle truth, at peace with your own span, your own rhythm, your own precious journey through the years. There is nothing to fear, nothing to measure, nothing to wish other than it is. There is only rest now, only peace, only the gentle truth at the heart of it all, carrying you softly toward your own deep sweet sleep. Before we drift fully into sleep, let us return one last time to where our journey truly began, to the bones, the patient faithful bones that have told us everything we know about how long the dinosaurs lived. For there is a deep and gentle peace in remembering that all of this knowledge, all these years and lives and spans, rests upon the quiet testimony of the bones, the faithful records that waited across the ages to tell their stories at last. Remember the bone we imagined at the very beginning of our journey, the single fossilized bone, heavy and cold, the color of old stone. To most eyes it would look like a simple relic, a fragment of something long gone. But we have learned, across this long evening, to see it differently. We have learned to see it as a book, a journal, a faithful diary written in rings and layers, holding within it the whole record of a life, the years counted, the seasons marked, the good times and the hard times all faithfully preserved across the immense gulf of time. The bone is not a dead thing. It is a keeper of memory, a faithful witness, a patient record waiting to be read. And how patient the bones have been. They waited across 66 million years and more, deep in the rock, holding their records, keeping their faithful count, while the world transformed above them, while the continents drifted and the mountains rose and fell, while the mammals spread and the birds took to the skies and the slow patient work of life eventually gave rise to us. Across all those immense ages, the bones waited, holding their memory, keeping their count, faithful to the lives they recorded, patient beyond all imagining. And then at last in our own age they came to light and gave up their long-kept secrets, and told us at last the stories they had held so faithfully for so very long. There is something deeply moving in this faithfulness, this patience, this quiet keeping of memory across the immense ages. The bones did not forget. They held their records faithfully, kept their counts patiently, preserved the memory of the ancient lives across spans of time beyond all reckoning. And because of their faithfulness, because of their patient keeping, the years of the dinosaurs are not lost. The lives are not forgotten. The seasons that the great creatures lived through are still counted, still remembered, still there, preserved in the faithful bones across the great gulf of time. Nothing was truly lost. The bones kept faith, and so the memory endures. When you imagine the bones now in the gentle dark, imagine them not as cold dead relics but as faithful keepers of memory, patient witnesses to ancient lives, holding their records across the ages with quiet devotion. Imagine the rings within them, the faithful diaries, the years counted and the seasons marked, all preserved across the immense gulf of time, waiting patiently to be read. There is such peace in this faithfulness, such comfort in this patient keeping, such gentle beauty in the bones that held their memory across 66 million years and more, faithful to the ancient lives they recorded, patient beyond all imagining. And there is peace too in knowing that your own life, like the lives of the dinosaurs, leaves its traces, makes its mark, matters in ways that endure beyond the brief span of the living moment. The dinosaurs are gone, but their years are still counted, their lives still remembered, their stories still told, because their bones kept faith across the ages. And though we cannot know what traces our own lives may leave, what records may endure, we may take comfort in the deep truth that the dinosaurs teach us, that lives matter, that years are not lost, that even across the immense gulf of time, the memory of a life can endure, faithful and patient, waiting to be remembered. Let us rest now with the faithful bones, the patient keepers of memory, the quiet witnesses that held the records of the ancient lives across 66 million years and more. Let their faithfulness comfort you, their patience soothe you, their quiet keeping of memory settle over you like a gentle peace. The years are not lost. The lives are not forgotten. The bones kept faith, and so the memory endures, faithful and patient, across the great gulf of time. Let that deep peace carry you gently, the peace of the faithful bones and the enduring memory, toward your own deep sweet rest. Let us spend one more gentle while contemplating the seasons, those great turning wheels of the year that mark the passing of every dinosaur life, for there is a deep and soothing peace in imagining the slow turning of the seasons across the long span of a single dinosaur's years. We have spoken of the rings in the bones, the records of plenty and scarcity, summer and winter, that stacked up year by year across a life. Let us now simply rest within that turning, feeling the seasons pass slowly across a long dinosaur life, one gentle turn at a time. Imagine, as you rest, a young dinosaur living through its very first turning of the seasons. It hatched, perhaps, in the warm season of plenty, when the world was lush and green and food was everywhere. Through that first warm season it grew quickly, feeding on the abundance, packing on size in the generous warmth. And then, as the seasons turned, the leaner time came, the drier or cooler season, and the young creature learned for the first time the lesson of scarcity, the careful endurance of the harder months, the patient waiting for the rains to return. One full turning of the great wheel, plenty and then scarcity, recorded faithfully in a single ring within its growing bones. And then the wheel turned again, and the warm season of plenty returned, and the young dinosaur, now a little larger, fed once more on the renewed abundance. And then scarcity again, and then plenty again, the great wheel turning and turning, season following season, year following year, each turn recorded in a faithful ring, each cycle marking another year of the lengthening life. For a creature that lived many decades, this turning would repeat again and again, dozens of times across its long life, the great wheel of the seasons turning steadily on as the creature grew and matured and aged beneath the changing sky. There is such peace in this slow steady turning, this great reliable rhythm of the seasons across a long life. The plenty always followed the scarcity, and the scarcity always gave way again to plenty, the great wheel turning steadily on, reliable as the rising and setting of the sun. The dinosaur lived within this turning, carried along by it, its life measured out in the slow steady cycles of the year, season following season in a rhythm as old as the world itself. And there is deep comfort in such reliability, such steadiness, such gentle predictable turning of the great wheel of the seasons across the long years of a life. Imagine living within such a rhythm, slowly as you rest, carried along by the great turning of the seasons across the long decades of a dinosaur life. The warm seasons of plenty and the lean seasons of scarcity, turning steadily one into the other year after year, a great reliable rhythm carrying the creature gently through its many years. There is no anxiety in such a life, no fear of the turning seasons, only the steady acceptance of the great rhythm, the patient living through plenty and scarcity alike, carried along by the reliable turning of the year. The dinosaur did not fear the lean season, for it knew in its way that plenty would return as it always had, as the great wheel always turned. And in that steady acceptance, that patient living within the great rhythm, there is a deep and gentle peace. Let the slow turning of the seasons settle over you now, the great reliable wheel of the year turning steadily across the long span of a dinosaur life. Plenty and scarcity, summer and winter, turning steadily one into the other year after year, carrying the great creatures gently through their many years. There is such peace in the steady turning, such comfort in the great reliable rhythm, such deep calm in the slow patient cycle of the seasons across a long life. Let that turning carry you gently, the slow steady wheel of the seasons, the great reliable rhythm of the years, toward your own deep and peaceful rest. And here, in the last quiet stretch before sleep, let us simply wonder a while, gently, about the strange and beautiful question we set out to answer tonight. How long did the dinosaurs live? We have traced so many answers, the brief and the long, the swift and the slow. But beneath all the numbers and the spans, there remains a soft and lovely wonder that no counting can quite capture. The simple marvel that these creatures lived at all, that they walked and grew and aged beneath a sun so very long ago, that their days, however many or few, were real days, lived by real creatures in a real and vanished world. Think of it softly. Each of those ancient days was as real as the day you have just lived. The dinosaur woke in its way to the morning light. It moved through its hours, feeding, walking, resting. It felt the warmth of the sun and the cool of the evening, the abundance of the wet season and the hardness of the dry. Its days were real days, lived moment by moment just as your days are lived, each one a small complete world of waking and moving and resting. And there were so many of them, so many millions of ancient days, lived by so many countless creatures, across the vast unfolding of the long reign. We can count the years, the rings in the bones, the spans of the great kinds. But beneath the counting lies this softer truth, that every one of those years was made of days, and every one of those days was lived, really lived, by a real creature in a real world. The long-necked giant 70 years were made of more than 20,000 days, each one lived beneath the ancient sky. The swift hunter's handful of years were made of thousands of days, each one real, each one complete. The days mount up into years and the years into lives, and the lives into the great vast reign of the dynasty, all of it built from days, real days, lived one at a time by creatures long ago. There is something almost unbearably tender in this, when you let it settle softly in the drowsy mind. All those days, all those countless ancient days, lived and gone, each one real, each one complete, each one a small whole world of light and warmth and movement and rest. The dinosaurs lived their days as we live ours, one at a time, present in each, and then those days passed into years and the years into lives and the lives into the deep past, gone now but real once, as real as this very day you have lived. Let that gentle wonder settle over you now, the soft marvel of all those ancient days, lived one at a time by creatures long ago, real days in a real and vanished world. And let it remind you softly of the preciousness of your own days, each one real, each one complete, each one a small whole world to be lived and savored before it passes into the gathering years. The dinosaurs lived their days fully, present in each, and then let them go. And you may do the same, living each day fully and then releasing it gently, as the day you have just lived now releases you softly into the welcoming dark of sleep. We have come, now, very nearly to the end of our long quiet journey through the years of the dinosaurs. Let us take these last soft steps together, gently, slowly, as the mind grows heavy and the body grows soft and sleep draws near. There is nothing left to learn now, nothing left to count or trace or understand. There is only the gentle settling toward rest, the slow soft drifting toward sleep, in the good company of all the dinosaurs whose lives we have explored. Think of them all now, one last time, drifting through your softening mind like creatures moving slowly through a gentle mist. The small swift hunters with their brief bright years. The great predators with their hard fast decades. The armored and the horned with their patient middle spans. The gentle duck-billed multitudes in their great herds. The birds carrying the ancient lineage into our own skies. And above all the great giants, the long-necked sauropods, living their gentle centuries, growing slowly across the decades, enduring in the long calm of their great size. Let them all drift through your mind now, slowly, gently, all of them at peace, all of them at rest after their many years. Think of the long-necked one, our gentle giant, whom we followed from her egg through her 70 years to her quiet end. She rests now, as she has rested for 66 million years and more, her long life complete, her many years counted, her story told at last. And in the thought of her gentle rest, her long life lived fully and completely, her quiet ending after all those decades beneath the warm sun, there is a deep and gentle peace, a model for your own rest now, the peace of a long life and a gentle ending, the deep calm of a creature at rest after all its years. Let your breathing slow now, in the rhythm of the great giants, the slow deep breathing of the patient creatures who lived across the decades. Breathe in slowly, like the giant drawing breath beneath the ancient sky. Breathe out slowly, like the giant settling toward its rest in the warm evening light. Let your breath grow as slow and as deep and as peaceful as the breathing of the great slow giants, the long-lived ones, the patient creatures who lived in tune with the slow turning of the world. Slow and deep and peaceful, the breath of the resting giant, carrying you softly towards sleep. There is nothing you need to do now. Nothing to solve, nowhere to be, no years to count, no worries to carry. There is only the gentle drifting toward sleep, the soft settling toward rest, in the good company of all the dinosaurs, beneath the same patient stars that watched over them across all their long-ago years. The great creatures are at rest now, all of them after all their many years, and you may rest too, held in the same gentle dark, watched over by the same ancient stars, carried softly toward sleep by the slow deep rhythm of the patient giants. Let go now of the day, of its cares and its worries, of all the small concerns that pressed so close. Let them grow small and distant as our own brief lives against the vast deep time of the dinosaur reign. Let them drift away like mist in the morning, leaving only the gentle peace, the soft calm, the deep quiet of the mind settling toward rest. There is only peace now, only calm, only the gentle drifting toward sleep in the good company of the ancient creatures, beneath the patient stars, in the soft warm dark. Rest now. Let the great slow rhythm of the dinosaur years carry you, the gentle centuries of the giants, the deep calm of deep time, the soft peace of the ancient world settling into night. The dinosaurs lived their many years, the brief and the long, and they are at rest now, all of them, their stories told, their years counted, their long reign ended and yet flowing on in the birds that sing outside your window even now. And you may rest too, in their good company, carried softly toward sleep by the gentle rhythm of their long-ago lives. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel as it really helps us continue making more content. Anyways, see you in the next one. And as you drift off now into your own deep rest, let one last gentle question settle softly in your mind, something to wonder about as you sink towards sleep. If you could have watched over a single dinosaur across the whole long span of its life, from the egg to the gentle end, which one would you have chosen to follow through all its years? The swift little hunter with its brief bright span, or the great long-necked giant with its gentle century beneath the ancient sun? Let the question drift through your softening mind, with no need to answer, no need to decide, only to wonder gently as you sink at last into the deep sweet rest that awaits you. Sleep now. Rest well. And may your own dreams be as gentle and as vast as the long-ago world of the dinosaurs.